Class is in session, hitting the books. Pub Sports Radio, Monday, October 30th. Ian Cameron and Conor Mack with you, ready to break down the college football slate. And for the both of us, it was a terrific week betting-wise in college football. Probably my strongest week, definitely strongest Saturday of the season. C-Mac had a big Saturday. So we're coming off a week where things went really well. We crushed it for the most part. But it's not about what you've done. It's about what you're about to do. Let's see if we can bring you an encore here with the upcoming week in college football. We'll start with the weeknight action, and we've got Maction on weeknights back in our lives again. Starting on Tuesday night, it's Buffalo taking on Toledo. The Rockets 15.5-point home favorites, 52.5 being the total in this game. I'll tell you this right now, and look, I know Buffalo is certainly in this conference this year had some struggles, some ups and downs. That being said, the 3-1 still in conference play to this point. I know the non-conference was a bit of a struggle for them, but you can go back with this Toledo team now well into last year, maybe even 2 years ago. They aren't just bad as a double-digit favorite. They are brutal. They are horrendous as a double-digit favorite. You are not going to be catching me laying more than 2 touchdowns here with the Toledo Rockets, even though Toledo is on a nice run here in conference play. Win against Western Michigan, Northern Illinois, Ball State, Miami O in their 4 conference games. That being said, they're only 1-3 against the spread in those conference games, and the only game they covered was that competitively lined game a couple weeks ago against Miami, Ohio, 21-17. They got off to that fast start, and then they had to hang on for dear life. But they have been miserable as double-digit chalk, just absolutely awful when being asked to lay double digits. And it's been that way really since Jason Candle's been the head coach here. And you look at this year, more of the same. Western Michigan, 21.5-point favorites, did not cover. Northern Illinois, 13.5-point favorites, did not cover. UMass on the road, 19.5-point road favorites, did not cover. Ball State, 17.5-point road favorites. They only win that game by 7. I mean, Toledo's been a miserable double-digit favorite. I know this Buffalo team's not as good as years past, but you look at their recent results, and other than the loss against Liberty, they've only lost their 2 losses in their schedule outside of that against FBS competition. They lost by 7 at UL Lafayette, the Cajuns, and a 10-point loss against Bowling Green. So they've been competitive in their losses. They also have wins against Akron, Central Michigan, and Kent State. When you look at the Buffalo offense, they've definitely struggled to run the football based on what they've done in the past. Hopefully they can get that ground game going. But, their defense isn't that bad. And when you look at, Toledo or Buffalo defensively, they have had issues stopping the run. They've been better against the pass. I am worried a little. Toledo is definitely reliant on the run, and Buffalo's weakness defensively is stopping it. But nevertheless, somehow, some way, whether it's lack of focus, mistakes, turnovers, penalties, you name it, Toledo has a very clear track record of keeping these teams in games when they're laying big numbers like this. So for me right now, it's Buffalo, or you don't bet the game, and I'll probably will be on Buffalo here. They've been that bad as double-digit favorites, Toledo, the last year or so. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, if you've watched us for the last, 3 or 4 years, Toledo laying this, just we go with certain teams that just aren't good as favorites, and they haven't been one of them. They're 7-1, 4-1 in the MAC. They should win this game. That was the key, I thought, hitting this. You kind of just touched on it, but Bano was Toledo on the ground, 234. I think it's top 5, and Buffalo gives up a bunch. They've been better, but they haven't really played anyone. They're back playing Kent State. They're a little tougher schedule, obviously, early on. I can't lay it with Toledo, and they could win big here, but just because their history, no way. And they're not a good ATS team laying it. So to me, it's Buffalo as well, or pass. I lean over. I wanted to double check the weather. Here, I have this pulled up. I don't know how bad it is, but that's something we got to look at. It's pretty good there at the Glass Bowl. 37 degrees, 8 mile an hour wind. It'll be cold, but these teams are fine with the cold.
I agree with that. And by the way, I don't want to make a habit of promoting other sites, but better-weather.com, that's better with an O, obviously, better-weather.com. Take a look at that site. It's phenomenal for weather reports, and it gives you game-by-game NFL, college football, and it gives you the current forecast for that day at kickoff, wind conditions, whether it's going to be snow or rain, precipitation, wind, miles per hour, wind in each game. So it is a great resource, especially at this time of year when, look, you've got to be aware of what the weather is, for these outdoor games, because especially when you're betting totals. And for this game, it looks like we have a slight chance of snow showers, but it's slight, 36 degrees Fahrenheit, and very light winds. So minimal impact caused by the weather on this game. So I would lean over too, because the one thing I do worry about, even though I like Buffalo with all the points, is their run defense is awful. And Toledo is going to be a run-heavy team. That's the way they run their offense. They don't ask Daquan Finn to do a lot throwing the ball. Throws it when he needs to. He's a very athletic quarterback. He can run. And I worry about the Buffalo run defense. So I could see Toledo scoring. But again, Buffalo, I could see them being able to score some points as well. So I'm with Conor there. If I'm looking at the total, I would also look at the over here in this one. All right, Northern Illinois and Central Michigan. We've got Northern Illinois 5-point road favorites, 44.5, 45 being the total in this game. We got a lot of money coming in here on Northern Illinois. They've taken all the early action here in this game on this Tuesday night MAC contest. Of course, they've got a very experienced quarterback leading them in Rocky Lombardi, who, of course, started his career at Michigan State. His numbers on the season so far, when you look at it, pretty solid overall. 6 touchdowns. He does have 4 interceptions. He has made some mistakes, 58.1% completions. We'll see how he fares here in this matchup. Central Michigan, they are 3-0 on their home field. So, the money coming in here on Northern Illinois, I think, is a response to how they've played lately. They beat up Akron. They had a very nice win outright as underdogs against a pretty good Ohio Bobcats team. And then they beat Eastern Michigan 20-13 in their most recent game. You look at Central Michigan, they haven't been good, and they've been burning money for their backers. 0-4 against the spread their last 4 games. In conference play, they have a win against Eastern Michigan by 3. They got drubbed by Buffalo, 37-13. They had narrowly escaped with a win against Akron, 17-10. Very ugly performance from them there. And then against Ball State, who are definitely one of the weaker teams in the MAC conference this year, they lose outright. Central Michigan in their last game to Ball State, 24-17. I actually like Ball State a little bit in that game. Tough to get there with Central Michigan, but you have to also remember they are 3-0 at home this year, so they're perfect on their home field. Now, their competition hasn't been great, but they have won here. And you have to remember, they haven't been an underdog other than 2 games this year. And in those 2 games, they covered as an underdog. Actually, 3. The other one was Michigan State. They got trampled in that game. But the other 2 times they were dogs, Notre Dame covered as 35-point dogs, lost by 24, and they beat South Alabama. Remember that game? Outright, 16.5-point dogs. It was one of the more surprising results of the season, 34-30. If you missed the boat and didn't take Northern Illinois already, I wouldn't be rushing to lay it with them now at 5.5. Not sure I'll get there with Central Michigan, but the more this line creeps up, the more I'm getting interested in maybe backing the Chippewas here as a home underdog. I think their offense is still capable. They've had some issues. They've gone back and forth between Bert Emanuel and Jace Bauer. Bert Emanuel, of course, has been battling injuries that have kept him out the last 3 weeks. Jace Bauer has been primarily the guy. There is a chance Bert Emanuel is ready to go, though, for this game. So we might see him at quarterback here for Central Michigan. And that might be a good thing because you look at the numbers for Jace Bauer, 58% completions, 5 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. When you have more INTs than touchdowns, that's a problem. So we'll see, but right now I have no interest in laying with Northern Illinois now at the current number. It would be Central or nothing for me. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, this is difficult. As good as right now, I think Northern Illinois is better. Now laying points, basically a touchdown here on the road, is different type thing than they've had to deal with. I think the last few years. I don't think they've done that a ton. I'm gonna have to look that up. We know they have Rocky Lombardi, who's been pretty good. The guy's a game manager for the most part. And the bigger why they're favorites here is their defense. They're just the better defense in this game. But I think Central Michigan, I know it would be different. Bauer just hasn't been great, as you mentioned, 5 touchdowns, 6 picks. But I'm really interested in Central Michigan here as a home dog. I just think they played a lot better there, and I think they could cover the number. So I'm looking that way with Central.
Yeah, no doubt. And keep in mind, too, with Northern Illinois' schedule, look at the schedule for Northern Illinois, really, outside of the two MAC teams that are pretty good, Ohio and Toledo. They played Eastern Michigan, Tulsa, Nebraska, Southern Illinois, Boston College. That's not a great schedule for Northern Illinois. At least with Central Michigan, you've seen them play, Notre Dame, South Alabama, in non-conference play. So they've really been tested. And yeah, I'm with you. It would be Central Michigan now.
They've owned this rivalry too a little bit. Northern Illinois has had a few wins, but not really covers. I think it's like 1-8 ATS.
100% right. That's 100% right, Connor. I'm just looking at it right now, CMAC. 8-1 against the spread the last 9 meetings for Central. So, yeah, chips are nothing, I think, for the both of us here in this game. All right, Wednesday night, Ball State and Bowling Green as Maction continues. We've got Bowling Green, 5.5-point home favorites, 39.5 being the total in this game. Ball State obviously have not had a good season. We know that. They are currently 1-3 in conference play. The only team worse than them right now in MAC conference play, the only 2 teams worse than them are Akron and Kent State, who are at 0-4 in conference play right now. So it's not a very good Ball State team. That being said, we did see a pulse from them really each of the last 2 games. They had that dreadful run. Like, I wanted no part of them. I was fading them. I remember taking Georgia Southern against them, took Western Michigan against them, Eastern Michigan against them. But I did come back on Ball State a couple weeks ago when they played Toledo, and that was just, let's fade Toledo as double-digit favorites, which we talked about earlier in the show. They're brutal. And against Toledo, Ball State was catching 17.5, and they lost by 7 right in that game pretty much from start to finish. And so they got a little confidence from, playing one of the best teams in the conference pretty tough. And then they rolled that into the Central Michigan game, and they won outright as 5-point dogs, 24-17. So it was a much better game from Ball State. I think they're undervalued right now, and so I'm kind of leaning to Ball State here in this matchup against Bowling Green. I know, and that's sometimes what you see in college football. A team is just so bad for like 3-4 weeks early in the season, like Ball State was. And then when they start to get better, and then when they start to cover some numbers as inflated point spreads, the betting markets are slow to react, slow to catch up to it. And I think that might be the case here with Ball State right now. They're not a very good offensive team, and especially if they can't run the football, they really struggle. Kelly is a work in progress at the quarterback spot, Kyle Kelly. But they do have a good running back in Marquez Cooper. I think the key handicap here is what can Ball State's run game do here in this matchup against Bowling Green. The Bowling Green run defense this season, it's actually their pass defense has been good. Their run defense is the area that's a little bit more vulnerable. So we'll see if Ball State can take advantage of that. On the flip side, you've got, of course, the guy that was at Missouri for years, Conor Bazelak, the quarterback here for Bowling Green, a Falcons team that, has played some pretty good football 3 of the last 4 weeks. That shocking win against Georgia Tech. And remember, when you have an outlier like that, Bowling Green beats a team like Georgia Tech as a 3-touchdown dog from a power conference. Sometimes that leaves Bowling Green, you would think, maybe a little overvalued. They got shut out in their next game. Miami O was probably a good hangover spot, but they have bounced back since then with wins and covers against Buffalo and Akron. So Bowling Green's been pretty solid. That being said, Ball State definitely has turned a little bit of a corner. Again, cover 2 in a row. And in a conference like this where, I don't think there's that huge gap. Toledo is great. Ohio's up there. You've got your best teams in this conference for sure. But then you group the middling teams to the below average teams. You put them in one big group, and there's not as much separation. So it's kind of why I'm leaning here to Ball State here, plus the points in this one. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, this was one last night. With Bowling Green, they're just not a team I want to lay points with, and they should be the favorite. But when I was going through all the numbers last night, there's not a lot of difference on these 2 teams. Offensively, they're both not very good. They average about the same. Bowling Green's maybe a little bit better, and they're pretty close. And I'd say Ball State maybe has the better defense. Now, they are on the road, and they just haven't been good on the road. Ball State so far this year, 4-0 straight up. But I think they can hang around. The offense just hasn't been great. I got to wait on this. We have a low total. I don't think there's a ton of scoring. And if Ball State is in it and you want to take them as a dog, I think they have to keep it low scoring. They're just not a team that's going to get up and down at all here with Bowling Green.
By the way, the guy that started the season as their quarterback, this is a guy I know that played, I believe, at Arkansas State. I think he might have been at Troy, but I definitely remember him from Arkansas State, Lane Hatcher. He got benched a
Hmm.
couple games ago. I mean, that's bad. I mean, this guy's experienced. He's been around the block, and he struggled so much early on that the head coach here at Ball State basically had to bench him, and that's why he's gone to Kelly here the last few games. So that's a bad sign for Lane Hatcher. I mean, you came here to be the quarterback because you figured, hey, there's no way this job isn't mine, and you're so bad that Mike New has to bench you, essentially. So not good, obviously, for Lane Hatcher right now. But yeah, this is an interesting game. I'm leaning Ball State. Kent State and Akron. We've got Akron 3.5-point home favorites, 38.5 the total. So someone's going to win their first conference game here between these two teams. These are the two winless cellar dwellers, if you will, in MAC conference play. Not only identical conference records, 0-4, but also identical straight-up records, 1-7, both of these teams. So I personally was higher on Akron coming into this season than Kent State. I mean, we knew Kent State was going to fall way off this year after last year. They lose everybody. You know, their head coach is now Deion Sanders, offensive coordinator at Colorado. Sean Lewis, he left. Quarterback's gone. Starting over in the trenches on the O-line and the D-line. Defense lost everybody or the majority of their key contributors from last year. So you knew it was going to be pretty rough for Kent State. I did expect Akron to be probably a little bit better than a 1-7 start. I really thought this team would take some strides forward. And, you know, they've been competitive in a couple of games, but I definitely thought by now you maybe would have seen this team win at least a game or two other than beating Morgan State, which is still their only win on their resume. But, you know, you look at Kent State and you look at the way they've been on the road and, you know, just been absolutely terrible the last 3 road games. 53-10 loss to Fresno, 42-17 loss to Ohio, 28-14 loss to Eastern Michigan. So those are all double-digit road losses, 3 in a row for Kent State. And they've failed to cover 5 in a row. Akron's only 1-3 against the spread, but I know for a fact Kent State has been atrocious on the road. And I still think Akron, push comes to shove, there's more upside and a higher ceiling for them going forward than this Kent State team. So I'd actually lean to the home favorite here, Akron. I'm seeing a sign that this number has come down from 4 to 3.5. I might even bet it if it hits 3, but I definitely lean Zips right now. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, the hook's pretty big, I think, here. Just 2 bad teams. Man, you gotta to really like if you want to find an angle and bet this game. And I don't. And one thing, like you were going through, that's been a theme. Obviously, this is the MAC. It's just kind of the average or poor quarterback play. Akron's what's his Undercuffler Jr. You know, it's similar. We see a lot of these guys. They seems like they all have like 5 touchdowns, 6 picks. When I was going through every one of these games. I do think they're a little bit better than Kent State, not by a bunch. I kind of lean them to win the game, but I'm not going to lay it. I'm not going to do it. This was, for me, a pass.
Yeah, I don't blame you. But I definitely feel that, I just feel like Kent State on the road, to me, is a more dangerous proposition than taking Akron, even laying a little bit more than a field goal at home. And I gotta believe that if he remains the quarterback, and he is, because DJ Irons is out for the season, if it's Jeff Undercuffler again, he'll get better as this. Remember, this guy started games last year for Akron. You know, he got into a few games. Now, again, his touchdown interception ratio has to improve. As a starting quarterback here at Akron, he's got 7 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. I mean, that's got to improve. If you're Jeff Undercuffler, you can't have that kind of those kind of numbers. But I think this is now a step down. This is a bad Kent defense. Look, Kent's given up 41, 55 in some of their recent games. It's not like Akron's defense is great, but I think this is an opportunity here for Undercuffler maybe to get things going against what's obviously definitely a bad Kent State defense in this one. All right, let's go to Thursday now, where we've got the TCU Horned Frogs and the Texas Tech Red Raiders. How about a little Big 12 action on Thursday night? Texas Tech 3-point home favorites, 58.5 being the total here in this game. It looks like the weather's going to be fine in Lubbock for this matchup here on Thursday night with TCU and Texas Tech. If you look at TCU, this team has just been all over the map this year, you know, as far as their results are concerned. You look at the quarterback situation as well. It's likely going to have to be Josh Hoover once again at quarterback with Chandler Morris still out for the TCU side due to injuries. We'll see if they're able to overcome that situation. TCU coming off just a beatdown at the hands of Kansas State, 41-3. They got absolutely annihilated by Kansas State in their last game. Texas Tech is struggling too. They've lost 2 in a row. They also lost to Kansas State 38-21, and they had a 27-14 loss at BYU as well. But they were down to Jake Strong, who's basically the third quarterback on the depth chart. Should call him Jake Weak or Jake Not So Strong because he hasn't been very good here for Texas Tech since taking over. They badly need Baron Morton back. And the good news for Texas Tech, there is some good news coming off the bye week. It looks like Joey McGuire indicating that Baron Morton was able to practice fully on Sunday and is probable for this game. So it looks like Texas Tech will get Baron Morton back at quarterback. And at least with Baron Morton, this is a competent, capable offense, which you can't say with Strong. Strong was just not ready. You could tell he was indecisive, bad decisions. His accuracy left a lot to be desired. At least with Baron Morton, you have some kind of track record here of him being able to score points and lead the offense. You know, he played pretty well in the game against Baylor, where they won 39-14. The game against Houston, he started that game. He led Texas Tech to 49 points in that game. So Baron Morton, to me, when I grade the comparison and the difference between Strong and Baron Morton, it's a huge difference. Because Strong was terrible, and at least, you know, with Baron Morton, this team can move the football a little bit. So I actually think with Morton coming back, I like Texas Tech here, laying -3 at home in this game. I would lean over as well with him coming back. Question's going to be, what do you get from the TCU offense? Because you look at Hoover, he had a good game against BYU, but there were some turnovers from BYU that kind of inflated that score. And Hoover against Kansas State was completely shut down and really struggled. So what version of the TCU offense are you going to get? So I lean over. I probably like the side more, though. I like Tech in this spot, especially with Morton back on the field. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Let's hit the chat real quick. Our guy Rance, Truth Teller, DC Capper, Jeffrey Moore. Yeah, I gave out the Lions last, what was it, Tuesday on the radio, first half. I'm on it, so I don't blame you. I love it. Dom, who else is in here? James S., good to see you, my dude. Mikey M., check out his show later. Last call for alcohol, 6 Eastern. Wine time, my guy. Good to see you up in here. A few others. Kyle, thanks for the nice words there. Appreciate it. All right, let's get to this one. As long as Morton, and I think he is a go, like you were just talking about, I like Texas Tech, and the 2.5s are gone. I don't see a ton here. I got to look it up, but I don't see a lot. They're all gone to 3 here in this game. Hoover's just not been good. He wasn't good last week, and they got gashed TCU on the ground, like 343 yards. Just not very good from them. I don't think they have a great defense. You'd think they're going to play better here this week, but they just haven't been very good on the road, and I can't back them. Morton's in. I'm on Texas Tech to get a win here in Lubbock. Late.
All right, Wake Forest and Duke next up here. We've got Duke 12.5-point home favorites, 45 the total in this one. And Guns Picks, welcome into the chat. He does a lot of good content. So Guns Picks,
yeah, Guns
as well. Yeah, I mean, this game here, so I'm worried about Duke here with Beelan at quarterback. Henry Beelan is obviously not Riley Leonard. That's clearly the case. And I'm just trying to figure out, and I think the key here in this game is, Henry Beelan, is he a situation where, how good is he? That's the question here. The thing is with Riley Leonard, it's just been constantly some injuries and some issues for him. But as of right now, you look at the Duke quarterback situation for this game. Riley Leonard's good to go. He did gut through that Louisville. I think he was less than 100%, to be honest with you, against Louisville, quite honestly, from what I saw that game. I'm not sure he should have started. And, 9 for 23, 39% is not, Riley Leonard type numbers, and he was moving well. But to me, too, there was something still bothering him for him to play that bad. And it wasn't a good spot for Louisville. They were still coming off that Florida State game, and they just got absolutely just shut down completely by Louisville, 23-0 for the Louisville Cardinals. in that game. We'll see how they fare here. Bounce back spot, you would think, for Duke. I don't know. He didn't look right to me, Riley Leonard. I don't want Wake Forest. I know that. I don't want Wake Forest. Their only win the last 5 games was a lucky win. It was one of the worst calls, one of the worst decisions the officiating has ever made, in my opinion. That game, Christian Veilleux, the quarterback for Pitt, he clearly slid beyond the first down marker, which would have given Pitt a first down with like a minute left, and Wake had no timeouts left, so they couldn't stop the clock. They could have taken a knee, and Pitt would have won. They called him short of the line to gain when clearly everybody that watched that game saw that he was ahead of the first down marker. They had to punt, and Wake went down the field and scored the game-winning touchdown. Pitt got screwed, honestly, in that game completely against Wake. That's Wake's only win, in the last 5 games. They got blown out by Georgia Tech, blown out by Virginia Tech. They lose by 25, outmanned against Florida State last week, which wasn't a surprise. The defense is starting to get gassed, and you can see it. Mitch Griffiths hasn't been anything to write home about at the quarterback spot. This is a tough game. I didn't love what I saw from Leonard, and if he's going to have those struggles this week, I'm a little bit reluctant to lay 12 with them. So it's a lean to.
Is it me or Babana? It's him?
Yeah, it's just him.
I'll
So
hit it.
go
Let's
ahead.
get to it. Wake Forest, Duke. Are you there, Jose?
Yeah, I'm here. Give me 1 second. I'll be on screen with you. But yeah, it's Bobana. Go ahead.
No, that's cool. No, that's cool. Yeah, whenever you can. No big deal. Yeah, let's get to it. Wake here, Duke. He just mentioned Babano, Riley Leonard. I don't know what. He just doesn't look right. Ankles can be bad. I think we were talking about on Saturday, especially if you have a bad one, it could take a few months to heal. And he just doesn't look right. When I looked at this game, Wake, I still think they have an all right defense. So when I look, and I think Duke's defense is still pretty good. They got jumped on there by Louisville, and still, it was 23-0. The offense didn't do anything. Like Duke here at home should win this game, but I already like the under in this one, and I kind of lean to Wake Forest. I don't love it. It was tough to watch Griffiths. Like they were 3 for 14 on third down. I mean, I think he threw for 82 yards. It's just like they had that one drive. It was like 14-0 or 17-0. They scored a touchdown. That seemed like it was it in the first half. There was just nothing else for them against Florida State at home. But yeah, I'm leaning under and the points here.
All right. Yeah. Sorry about that. We're back. We just had a little crash of the screens in front of me. So we're back. All right. South Alabama and Troy. Next up, we've got Troy 6.5 point home favorites, 46 being the total here in this one. A nice little matchup here in the Sun Belt here between these two teams. South Alabama, this team's been erratic as all hell this year. I mean, when you look at what they've done, they went to Oklahoma State and they pounded Mike Gundy's team 33-7 in Stillwater. Then they come back the next week, they lose to Central Michigan at home, as a double-digit favorite in that game. Stunning loss. They lose to James Madison, but they're competitive, and James Madison's really good, as we know. And then they crush ULM. They crush Southern Miss. Looks like South Alabama's back on track. And then last week, 11.5 point favorites, and I'm so mad at the way they played, especially on offense, because I had the over in that game, and it fell short because of ineptitude, quite honestly, by South Alabama. Too many mistakes offensively from Carter Bradley, and fumbles and turnovers and stopped on fourth down and all this nonsense. Or they racked up more than enough yards to score more than 20 points, and they just stubbed their toe constantly. Could not finish drives, could not put points on the board, even though they were moving the football in that game. So they lost 33-20 as 11.5 point favorites to the Cajuns last week. Now they're playing this Troy team that I ain't stepping in front of Troy. I tried that one time, and I think it was with who was it? I think it was Georgia State a few weeks ago, and Troy was just too good for them. This is the best defense in this conference by far. They're excellent. They are terrific defensively. And look, if they get anything from their offense, which they were able to do against Texas State in that 31-13 victory over the weekend, then it's going to be tough to beat this team. I'm still not a Gunnar Watson fan, but he did have almost 400 passing yards against Texas State. It was a much better game from him, one of his better games throwing the ball, but he doesn't have to be great. Just do enough on offense, and the defense will take care of the rest. I was so impressed because Texas State with Finley at quarterback, that's a real good offense. And Troy pretty much put a blanket over them in that game on the weekend, winning 31-13. That's a good offensive team. Texas State early in the season, they scored we know how many points they put up against Baylor. It was very impressive, and they've put up some big points in other games. And Troy just said, it's not going to happen on our watch. We're the best defense in this conference. We're going to shut you down. And that's exactly what they did. And that, like I said, Texas State, the Bobcats, they have a solid offense. So I'm extremely impressed with what I've seen from the Troy Trojans defense this year. And I'm done getting in the way of this team. So for me, I'm not saying I'm going to take Troy, but Troy or nothing for me in this game. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, South Alabama turnovers,
just too flighty for me to trust them.
Yeah, in this series history too, Troy's taken care of them. I think they won 6 in a row, and most by this number. Last year, I think it was 10-6 was low scoring, but they have the defense. You're right. Like for me, under the touchdown, it's like you would need more. It's not that I'm just rushing to Troy, but under the touchdown, I think you lay it here with them. I would need like a lot more points to even look South Alabama's way, and I don't trust them at all. When I go through all the numbers with Troy's defense, it's just been really, really good. And they're at home. They should be pumped for this game. I'm leaning to lay it here as long as it's under the touchdown with Troy.
Yeah, last year at home, it was 10-6 for Troy. It was a close game. It was a defensive battle. That was at South Alabama, though. This year it's at Troy, their home field. And before that, though, the last 4 years they had played head-to-head, 38-17, 37-13, 29-0, and 31-24, all in favor of Troy. So all by a touchdown or more, except for last year. So, yeah, definitely I'm not getting in front of Troy.
Let's just put it
that way on Thursday night. All right, let's go to Friday night. ACC matchup, Boston College and Syracuse. We've got Syracuse 2.5, 3-point home favorites, 51 the total. I mean, Syracuse is a freight train careening out of control. And I want no part of that. This is now multiple years we've seen Dino Babers and his team just completely crumble in the second half, just fall apart. And they're showing signs of that again. And look, I said last week going into that Virginia Tech game, I did like Virginia Tech. They got the job done easily, destroying Syracuse last week on that Thursday night game. But I did say the only thing that you could really give Syracuse a break on is the fact that the 3 losses after that undefeated start were Clemson, North Carolina, and Florida State, all 3 really good teams. Virginia Tech not quite on that level, but the reason why I still like Virginia Tech is because Syracuse, not only when they collapsed last season 2 years ago, they started losing to mediocre teams as well and bad teams. And that's what we're starting to see now from Syracuse. Like Schrader in the offense has fallen completely off the map. They're struggling now to move the ball. They're struggling to put points on the board. And the defense has just been a sieve all of a sudden for Syracuse the last couple of weeks. They have just been terrible on the defensive side of the football. I'll be honest, I kind of lean Boston College here. Like, you cannot get me to the betting window to lay points with Syracuse right now. It's just not going to happen, especially when we know this team previously has had a track record of just completely imploding second half of the season. And we're seeing that right now once again with Syracuse. And say what you will about Boston College, it's a work in progress still for the offense, but the last couple of weeks I was impressed with Thomas Castellanos, dual threat quarterback. They put up 38 in a win against Georgia Tech, beat Army, beat Virginia, beat UConn. They didn't cover in that game, and I don't like Boston College as big favorite still. I did like UConn actually getting more than 2 touchdowns against BC last week, but the offense is coming along. Defense still isn't great, but you are still seeing that defense improve by the week. And to keep in mind too, with Boston,
pass defense has been good.
Yeah, no doubt. Their defense is getting better, and they're playing an offense that's falling apart right now. Like, all of a sudden, this offense that's lighting it up early in the season, they can't do anything right now. Like, they're having trouble just getting any sort of semblance, any sort of traction. I mean, this is an offense for Syracuse that's now scored in the last 3 weeks. Last 4 weeks, going back to the Clemson home game when this little swoon started for Syracuse. They have scored 34 points in the last 4 games combined. Wow. So they are averaging less than 10 points per game during this 4-game losing streak. So for me, it's Boston College, or you don't bet the game. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, Syracuse is just the only way you can look at it is they're coming back home here, and you think maybe that offense can get going because it has been nowhere to be found. You mentioned the last 3 or 4 weeks. I wanted to hit on the total because if the offense can get going, I wanted this total lower. Obviously, Boston College finally had an under with UConn, but before that, they had ripped off like 9 straight overs, especially when the number had been in the 40s, and that's what I was hoping for in this game. So, I mean, if it does go down and Syracuse's offense can get going, I think this game could go over, but I think the total right now is too high. This is the best spot for Syracuse to play. They're probably their best game in 4 or 5 weeks, but I can't do it. I can't take them. I go with Boston College or nothing as well. I just can't do it.
They are getting a discount now. Odds makers have reacted to this losing streak for Syracuse because you put this game before the Clemson game, which is when this losing streak started for Syracuse. If you would have put BC at Syracuse before the Clemson game, Syracuse is not laying 3. They're laying like 7 at least.
Yeah. But 2 teams going in opposite directions. Yeah. One that started out well, one that we were talking about how bad Boston College was earlier in the year, but started to play better football, and one just, falling.
Yeah.
So
the thing is, we know that this team has had a collapse before and they never got it back on the rails. So why would I bet it to get back on the rails when they haven't seen that? When they didn't do it before? I'm not convinced they'll do it again. All right, the other Friday night game, Colorado State and Wyoming. We've got Wyoming 7-point home favorites, 42.5, 43 being the total. Now, this is Wyoming at home. It's always a very, very tough place to beat this team. They've played consistently good football for the most part at home under Craig Bohl, but they're favored. And they're not only favored, they're favored by 7 here in this game. And this is not the type of price range I like Wyoming at home. I like Wyoming at home, but when I back them at home, I prefer them in a pick 'em. I prefer them as an underdog. I don't necessarily love it when they're 7-point home favorites. And if you actually look at the times they've been favored at home this year, Connor, Portland State, they were 28-point home favorites. They won by 14, so they didn't cover. App State, they were 3-point favorites. They won by 3. It was a push. They probably should have lost the game. Remember, they had that blocked field goal for a touchdown that won the game against App State at home there. And then the other time they were home favorites, New Mexico, 35-26, 14.5-point favorites. They didn't cover. So they've been good at home as in a pick 'em. They've been good at home as an underdog this year. We've saw it against Texas Tech early in the season. We saw it against Fresno State at home, where they won outright as 6-point home dogs. So as home dogs, they've been good. Home favorites, not so much for this Wyoming team. So I kind of lean to the other side here, Colorado State. A Colorado State team that's coming off, a tough couple of losses. They had that big win against Boise where they came back and they won it on that Hail Mary, which was a crazy finish in that victory against Boise a couple weeks ago. They lost a tough one to UNLV, heartbreaker. UNLV beat them with a last-second field goal at Alliance Stadium there in Las Vegas. And then Air Force, 30-13 last week. I mean, that game really, keep in mind, too, the Zach Larrier, 2 weeks in a row, the Air Force quarterback, people thought that he wouldn't play, and he did play. So a little bit of injury tomfoolery there with them leading you to believe he might not play, but he played in both games the last couple weeks for Air Force at quarterback. But, you look at Colorado State, obviously they were up against it there. Air Force is a really good team. I still don't mind the way he's played this year at quarterback, Fowler Nicolosi. Too many interceptions, but he also does have a 63.6% completion rate and 16 touchdowns for Braden Fowler Nicolosi, who's been the quarterback the last several weeks for Colorado State. I lost with Wyoming, so maybe it's recency bias here, but that was ugly from their offense, and that was bad Andrew Peasley. That's all there is to it. 50% completions, only 85 passing yards, and that's the problem. I think Wyoming wins in spite of this guy at quarterback because he's just not great. When they win, it's the run game's good, the defense is really good, the special teams makes an impact, but it's not because of their quarterback as to why they win games. Wyoming, he's not great. And I worry about that here against Colorado State, who look, Colorado State on defense, they've not been great, but maybe that's an opening for Peasley to improve. But, they've not been great as home chalk. Colorado State is a team that, they were competitive in the loss at UNLV. And the road dog roll, they've been very good. Colorado, we saw what happened there, took that game down to the wire to overtime, won outright as a dog at Middle Tennessee. And then Boise State as a dog, 7.5-point dogs at home against Boise. They won outright, 6.5-point road underdogs at UNLV. They lose by 2. So the underdog role, and especially the road underdog role, has been pretty good to Colorado State. I'm leaning with the Rams here on Friday night. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, and it's going to be cold and windy on Friday night too. I got winds over 20 miles an hour here at Laramie, so we'll see how much that affects this game. Colorado State, we know they want to throw the ball around. That's one of Wyoming's strengths on defense. They're pretty good. Their secondary is good. They only give up 210 passing yards per game. And on the flip side, Wyoming's going to want to run it. Yeah, Peasley. We talked about it on Saturday morning. He just has to be okay and good, and he has been most of the year. I mean, he wasn't awful, but he was bad. And after that first quarter, Wyoming was out of the game.
Yeah.
Like it was like 8-7, and they just got blown out, especially the second half. I think they win this game. It's just tough, like you talked about, to lay a touchdown here with Wyoming. So yeah, I lean the dog a little bit. I wanted to mention, and their defense though is not very good. Colorado State's against the run. They gave like 170 yards. So Wyoming should be able to run it down their throat.
All right, we move to Saturday now for the rest of the show and the rest of the games. Miami, NC State. We've got Miami 4-point road favorites, 45.5 the total in this one. We saw NC State getting a big win for them against it's not as big as beating Clemson would be last year or 2 years ago, but still a good win, 24-17, 10-point home dogs. They beat Clemson last week. So NC State, a solid effort in that game. Really good on the defensive side of the football. They made life very difficult for Cade Klubnik. It was a terrible game for him, and really they didn't run the football very well. So shout out to the NC State defense, which has struggled at times this year, but played a lot better. You saw that the Concepcion kid at receiver had a huge game for NC State, including 2 touchdown receptions from MJ Morris, the quarterback. So NC State, a big win. I worry about the letdown factor a little bit, but at the same time, I ain't laying 4 on the road with Miami. That's not going to happen here for me in this game. Coming off the 29-26 survival at the hands of Virginia in their last game. The defense struggled with Tony Muskett. Tyler Van Dyke really had a bad game. He got bailed out by a late touchdown drive, but 20 of 30, 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. It was not a great game for him. I don't trust this Miami team on the road. Again, life and death to beat Virginia at home last week. And NC State's improving. MJ Morris has stabilized the quarterback spot at least a little bit. He's not making the mistakes Brennan Armstrong did. The defense is getting better, I think, NC State a little bit. So I could only look at the Wolfpack here as a home underdog. C-Mac, what do you think here?
Me too. One of the ones I just kicked myself. I just wasn't on was NC State. I just maybe didn't spend too much time. I just kind of passed on it, and I wish I was. Usually these games are tight. Miami's won the last 3 or 4 years, but they've been close games because it's just not easy to go there and win at NC State. We talk about how bad they've been on the road ATS the last couple of years and how good they've been at home. So with Morris, I like him here in this spot. I think Miami's a pretty average football team. I think the defense is pretty good, but I think the game's close. So give me the points with NC State.
All right, Wisconsin and Indiana, Big Ten action. We've got Wisconsin 9.5 point road favorites, 45.5 being the total here in this game. I want to take this is a fascinating game. Braden Locke, of course, is the quarterback for Wisconsin now with Tanner Mordecai injured, and he was really bad for most of that game against Illinois. And then all of a sudden in the fourth quarter, he got on a run, he got on a roll, and the next thing you know, he's leading Wisconsin to a comeback win against Illinois in that game. And I was like, wow, he really turned it on in the fourth quarter. But was that a mirage or was that a sign of things to come? I thought last week, really good defense. You're facing Ohio State. He was all right. It was not going to be easy for him. Like he's only making his second start. And Ohio State's got an excellent defense this year. We know that. But he kept his team in the game. He didn't make as many mistakes as I thought. So I think I was positive. Now, the problem for Wisconsin is they got hella banged up in that game against Ohio State. And they've got some serious injury concerns going into this matchup here on the road at Indiana. When you look at Braylon Allen's injury, the all-world running back for them, he's doubtful. They've already lost Ches Malusi for the season at that same position. They got a couple injuries in the receiving core. So that's going to be next man up mentality for the skill position group here, especially at running back. Jackson Acker, Cade Yakimelli, those are the guys that are going to have to step up now for Wisconsin at running back here in this game. But coming off the tough loss, hard fought, and it was hard fought. And I thank Wisconsin for battling as hard as they did, because I took 14.5 with Wisconsin last week against Ohio State. But this is a tricky turnaround. That was a physical game Saturday night, NBC, with that Ohio State game. Turn around and face an Indiana team that really, of all the things that impressed me the most about certain teams on Saturday, it was Indiana and the fight they put up against Penn State. I mean, who the hell saw that coming? 31, 32-point dogs. They had done nothing on offense, and all of a sudden, here they are lighting up Penn State, Sorsby, through the air. I mean, couldn't believe it. Decimating this Penn State secondary. And James Franklin and Penn State, lucky as shit, they survived and escaped that game with a victory. And they only did because Indiana's defense is so bad that they finally, Drew Aller and Penn State finally hit on a big play against a pretty bad defense last week. And that saved them at the end of the game, a victory. So, but I was impressed with Indiana, and Sorsby had his best game, and the offense had their best game. And finally, with the new offensive coordinator, it looked like they were putting some things together. The play calling was a lot better. I like Indiana here a little bit. I saw life from them last week, catching 9.5 in this game. I definitely lean to the Hoosiers as home underdogs. And this total is going up from 44 to 45. We've got an injury situation at running back. Braden Locke is getting better, I think, slowly for Wisconsin. I think they're going to have to throw the ball a little bit more because of the injuries. On the flip side, Indiana finally had a breakthrough offensively on the road against Penn State, which we thought was a really good defense. And there's Indiana putting up numbers against them. I think this is a sneaky over as long as the weather's okay on Saturday here in Bloomington. And I'm seeing sunshine, moderate wind, nothing significant with weather right now. And I'm seeing the totals actually getting hit as we speak, 44 up to 45. I agree. I think it's a sneaky over. Two underrated offensive teams, a couple breakthroughs here the last couple weeks. What do you think here, CMAC, Wisconsin, Indiana?
Yeah, there are a lot of injuries you mentioned with Wisconsin, and that was the best Indiana. I was shocked. That and Utah, like those were bad losses. They were just bad. So I got them out of the way. As great as my whole day was, those were like kind of the only two losses I think I had. I might have one more. And yeah, I couldn't believe how Sorsby was just throwing it all over the yard on Penn State, just early and often. I was taken aback. I'm like, where's this team been all year long?
I get it, Conor, with Penn State. They were coming off the Ohio State loss, maybe a little hangover there. I get that. But still, I mean, you got to give
I thought they'd be better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get, the hangover, but I thought with Indiana, would get it. Yeah. They ended up winning by 9, or whatever it was. I'm with you here. I want 10. Really want 10. I don't think we get 10, but I'm on Indiana. I like what I've seen. And I think the play calling, even in the Penn State loss or the Michigan game with Indiana before that, like the plays were starting to change. They were at least making some trick plays, doing some stuff where I hadn't seen from that offense in Indiana. And we know what Wisconsin wants to do. I'm going to wait on the total because when I see these teams, I think under. But man, as much as I know you want points, I'm looking at the under. So I'm going to wait through the week on the total. But yeah, I'm with you here. Indiana or nothing.
And look, I'm no Rod Carey fan from a head coaching standpoint. I never loved him at Northern Illinois, never loved him at Temple, but he's the OC now here at Indiana, and I got to give him credit. He did a nice job with the play calling last week, and maybe he's just one of those. We see these all the time, guys that are just better coordinators than head coaches, and that might be the case here with Rod Carey here, who's now the OC for Indiana right now. All right, UCF and Cincinnati. In the Big 12, we've got, it's funny, it feels like this is an AAC game. All the years they were together and would face off in the AAC. They are still conference foes, but now they're in the Big 12, both of these teams. We've got UCF, 4.5 point road favorites, 58.5, 59 the total in this game. I cashed overs with both of these teams last week. I had UCF West Virginia over the total. I had Cincinnati and Oklahoma State. Thank you, Okie State, for that last touchdown late in the game to get that game over the total. I thought Cincinnati would do more offensively than they did, but that offense struggled against Oklahoma State. But we still got there with the over in that game. I certainly lean that way in this game. Definitely look for points, certainly from UCF. UCF, actually, if you look at the loss to West Virginia last week, they moved the ball all day, all game against West Virginia, and they just consistently stubbed their toe, and there were some bad interceptions from John Rice Plumlee. And that's still the issue he's got from time to time, just bad decisions and drive-killing mistakes. And he had a few of those against West Virginia that really hurt in the loss last week. Cincinnati, the hard part with the over to trust is this offense of Cincinnati's right now. I mean, Emory Jones hasn't been good. He struggled in the passing game again against Oklahoma State. They ended up going to Brady Lichtenberg at quarterback because Emory Jones was struggling so much, and he was not that much better. So they've got issues in the passing game right now, Cincinnati. So the one concern is UCF's going to have to do most of the scoring here in this game. I would lean UCF on the road here. I don't know how you back Cincinnati. They're falling apart. And the one thing, even though I cashed with the over, I should have laid the points with Oklahoma State. I said it on the show last week. I know I don't like Gundy as much as a favorite, but how can you trust Cincinnati right now? They're having a hard time stepping up to Big 12 play right now. There is no question about that. Their defense is getting gashed. They have very putrid quarterback play right now. So I would lean to the road favorite here. I don't want Cincinnati. I know that, and over as well. What do you think, C-Mac?
I get the over. We're just looking at the team total with UCF. Both these teams have been good, 6-2 to the over this year. And both defenses seem to kind of just melt down. Cincinnati was bad again in the second half. They were just a team that kind of fades, it seems, lately. And a guy like Emory Jones isn't going to throw it around and get you back in it. And when he does, he seems like he turns the ball over. We mentioned how bad it was last week, and they're just not backable. But now they are dogs. But I don't think it's enough. I wouldn't really lay it here with UCF. I would look at the team total or play the over because I just don't love them on the road from the bounce house laying points. But I do think they're a little better than Cincy in this game. So I'd look team total and that and just stay off. I might get on the over. I want to look at this a little more, but from everything all year, there should be points.
All right, next up, this is a really interesting game here. This is an interesting non-conference game. We've got Jacksonville State, one of the better teams right now in their conference, the Conference USA, taking on South Carolina. South Carolina, 15-point home favorites, 15.5 in some spots, 55 being the total here in this game. South Carolina, just when I'm ready to, just absolutely bail out on this team. I was on them a couple of weeks, and they're a team that's starting to frustrate me because I think I was on them against Missouri, and they didn't even show up in that game. And I went against them last week with A&M, and sure enough, South Carolina covers that game, although they still lost to Texas A&M in that game. The O-line is still an issue. Do you know that they've had 8 different offensive line starting combinations this year? It's just ridiculous. I mean, it's just they can't get any continuity. Spencer Rattler's being treated like a human whoopee cushion right now in the pocket. Yeah, he's just getting flattened. Every single week. This is not an offense where I'm loving laying 15.5 with them right now. Not at all. And if anything with Jacksonville State, Rich Rod's team should be fired up. They get to play an SEC team, really get to test their mettle, cut their teeth on a really good opponent or a Power 5 opponent here. I don't know about really good, but a Power 5 opponent. I think that has them fired up. Now, the one concern here would be the one good area. South Carolina has a horrible pass defense. Is Jacksonville State going to be able to exploit that? Jacksonville State, as we've said all season, they're very heavily run-oriented on offense, and that is the better part of the South Carolina defense. They're actually pretty good against the run. They're only giving up 3.8 yards per carry on the ground. So if Jacksonville State struggles to run the ball, can they do enough, to be able to move the football here? I still lean Jacksonville State. I don't want any part of laying a number like this with the Gamecocks. It's actually Gamecocks versus Gamecocks. It's a battle of the Gamecocks here. I should point that out.
Couple of cocks.
I would go with the underdog cock before I lay it with the favorite cock. Don't lay the favorite cock here in this one. But again, the concerns about going up against that run defense of South Carolina do worry me because Jacksonville State needs to be able to run the ball to have success because Webb and Smothers, they are athletic quarterbacks. They're still not gifted pocket passing quarterbacks. What do you think here, C-Mac?
No, they're not. But one thing, there's just certain teams we talk about, South Carolina. I know as a dog, you maybe look at them and they cover even though they lost, like you mentioned. Now they're back home in a game they should win, but there is no way in hell right now with this team, that offensive line. And the defense has been like at times, some game okay, and then just got torn apart. I just don't know what's going on with that South Carolina defense. at all. So, yeah, I think the points with Jacksonville State is the way to go here. I think they can hang around, they got to be up for this game. They had the bye, or they played the Thursday, so they've had a little extra rest.
Which is huge for a game like this where they're stepping up in class against a Power 5 team, where they've got that little bit of extra time to get ready for this game, which they do, quite honestly.
Yeah.
This is like a mini bye week. It's not a full bye week, but they played last, what was it, Tuesday or Wednesday against FIU. It was a Wednesday game last week.
I think it was a Wednesday game.
Yeah, it was a Wednesday night
16.
game, and that's basically going to be 8, 9, 10, basically 10 days now between games. So a little extra to get yourself ready for this game against South Carolina.
We saw them kind of get beat up by Liberty, but is this a huge, it is a step up, obviously, at South Carolina. I don't want to be on that side. That's for sure. You're right. Take the dog cock.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the Furman is the only win they've had by more than this point spread. They beat Furman by 26, South Carolina. So I'd be cautious as well about laying it. Ohio State Rutgers. Next up, we've got Ohio State 19-point road favorites, 42 being the total in this one. Ohio State is great defense. I'll say that. Now, McCord is still a work in progress. The offense has not been what we've seen in years past, certainly not under the C.J. Stroud years, the last couple of years. They're doing enough to get by. And against the weaker teams, they do put up points. We've seen it all year, 35 against Youngstown, 63 against Western Kentucky, 37 against Maryland, 41 against Purdue. It's when they play some better defenses, they've definitely had their issues. Rutgers, I'll give them credit. You've been betting Rutgers all season. You're making some big time money. You're 6-1-1 against the spread with Rutgers this year. I mean, they have been really, really impressive. Now, there's only one comparable as far as an opponent. Rutgers played Michigan, who's probably one of the few teams that are on par or better than Ohio State in the Big Ten. Well, they were 24.5-point dogs. They lost by 24. So they did cover if you got the hook in that game with Rutgers against Michigan. I wouldn't be rushing to lay this many points with Ohio State. Now, do I worry about the Rutgers offense against a defense like this? Yes, because the offense is still, work in progress. We've seen Gavin Wimsatt at times struggle, like the Michigan game, against good defenses, although he's improved this year. Will they be able to run the ball against Ohio State, which is what they want to do, Rutgers? That's their strength. And you look at this just Ohio State run D that has been dominant here. They are giving up just 99.8 yards per game, 3.1 yards per carry on the ground. That's not going to bode well for a Rutgers offense that's really reliant on running the ball. So I lean Rutgers, but I don't know if I'll get there. The total's going down, and I probably can agree with that as far as the under goes. What do you think here, C-Mac?
I don't think I can take Rutgers. I just, God damn it. Ohio State's really kicked their ass.
Yeah.
It seems like over the years I've been on this Rutgers spot, and it's not worked out at all. The defense has to keep them in it. You mentioned on the road at Michigan, they were pretty good. I don't know how they're going to score, really. Wimsatt's just, and to put the game in kind of his hands, it's just, I've seen enough. Against smaller teams, the Big 12, they win. They've been good against the number. They didn't cover against Michigan State, but they came back and won. Yeah, I don't know if I can get there with this Rutgers team, but they are at home. I don't know if 18.5 is enough. I think you need over 3 touchdowns to look at the dog here.
And look, they got their 6th win last week against Indiana, or last game, I should say, against Indiana to make them bowl. And they are off a bye week, so that's maybe a situational advantage for Rutgers. Bye week here for Schiano, but gosh, I don't love the idea of saying, even getting all these points, trusting this offense against that caliber of defense, especially if they can't run the football. I mean, you look at the final score against Indiana, 31-14, they won. You would think, yeah, great game for the offense. Wimsatt must have played good, right?
Oh, he had like 30 yards.
He was 5 for 12, 39 passing yards.
Shit. Jeez.
So that's why it's difficult for me to even take these points, even off a bye week, and knowing that, Ohio State sometimes struggles to win games this year by margin. It's why I was liking Wisconsin last week. I thought 14.5 was just a few too many, and sure enough, they only won by 14. I could see a 14, 17-point win here for Ohio State, and Rutgers stays inside the number. But I also, at the same time, really worry about whether that Rutgers team can move the ball at all against that Ohio State defense. All right, next up, we've got Florida State and Pittsburgh. Florida State, 22-point road favorites. And the total here currently 51.5. I really think you could take over in this game, and Florida State can probably do all the heavy lifting for you, because Pitt against a really good offense, and we saw it last week against Notre Dame, just couldn't stop them. And, at the same time, I expected more out of Christian Veilleux last week at quarterback against Notre Dame, but obviously 58-7, they got absolutely just destroyed on defense. Notre Dame had over 500 yards of offense. Good luck now against Florida State, this explosive, dynamic offense with Jordan Travis. They can run it. They can throw it. Coleman and Wilson are outstanding receivers for this Florida State team. If you trusted Pitt stepping up in class last week against Notre Dame, you saw what happened. I'm not trusting them stepping up in class here either. Now it's Florida State on the road, going to the Northeast, colder environment, and we saw them not react well at Boston College. That's what's going to keep me off Florida State here. I can't get Boston College going to the Northeast, colder environment, and they were life and death to escape with a win in that game. But I don't want Pitt. I don't want Pitt either. So I like the over. I'm going to take a shot with the over. I don't think the weather's going to be that bad. I think Florida State can get into the 40s at least. They might even hit 50. Hell, Notre Dame put up 58, and Florida State's a better offense, I think, than Notre Dame. So I think you bet over, and Florida State does most of the damage, and I think you can at least get something out of Pitt to help you get over the total. What do you think here, C-Mac?
I mean, man, I want to take Pitt here at home, but this team's just not very good. You think of Pitt's, the defense isn't there. They're not good on offense. But Florida State rolled again last week, and now on the road, you mentioned this could be the sleeper, type game. I'd lean them first half, Pitt maybe. I just don't know. This is one, when I was going through it last night, these games, I'm like, I got to look at more. Do I really want to go with Pitt? This team's 1-6 ATS. They've been horrible all year, right? And what's Florida State? 6-2 ATS. They're 8-0. So next.
Pitt's been an over team under Narduzzi as well the last few years. A lot of those Kenny Pickett over the total in their games. They're 4-1 to the over in their last 5 games as well, Pitt, coming into this.
Yeah, they can't stop much anything.
No, I like over. I'm going to end up getting there with the over here in this game. It's low enough. I think we can see this game get up and over the total. Partly sunny, moderate wind as of right now on Saturday at Pitt. So good weather for some offense there for early November. All right, Penn State, Maryland, as we go to the Big Ten next up. Penn State, 10.5-point road favorites, 50 the total in this game. Give me Maryland here. I mean, I've seen enough now. The Ohio State loss, a little bit of a hangover, sleepwalk for Penn State. Although, like I said, you got to give Indiana credit. They played well as well, but that was like a D- game out of Penn State. I mean, 32-point favorite. They're lucky to win the game straight up. I ain't laying 10.5 on the road with this bunch, and at all. Maryland, obviously, is a team that's, had some erratic behavior in terms of their recent performances. No question about that. They've had, really a couple of clunkers, couple of head scratchers. How do you lose to Illinois as 13-point favorites? How do you lose to Northwestern last week as 14.5-point road favorites, 33-27? That defense hasn't been good. It's unfortunate because little Talia is playing okay. The offense is moving the ball, but all of a sudden the defense is falling apart. 37, 27, 33 allowed in each of the last 3 games going into this matchup. So I still think, but again, yes, Maryland's 0-3 straight up the last 3. But 2 of the games they were competitive. At Ohio State was the other. Penn State's got to go to College Park. And last year I know it was ugly. It was 30-0, but that was at Penn State. I just don't trust Penn State anymore after what I saw last week. It's just, for me, difficult to say, let's lay 10.5. Now, Maryland, you could say it's difficult to take them now, too. We just lost to Illinois and Northwestern back-to-back weeks. Not a good look for Mike Loxley and the Terrapins. But if you give me a choice here, Maryland before I take Penn State. Lean over the total as well in this one. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, classic Maryland. They start out 4-0, 5-0, and now, like a lot of these teams we've got to, Kentucky, a few others we've gone through. You know what I thought? I think you look at Penn State's team total here. Well, at the full game over, I think this is too light. I
was on Indiana Penn State over, and it flew over. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think Penn State gets to the 40s, and I think Tua and that offense for Maryland could score a little bit. Now, will the Penn State defense be revved up? Because, Indiana, the team who hasn't thrown the ball all year long, throws for like 200 in the first half and almost 300 for the game. So, we'll see what Penn State defense comes to play here. But yeah, when I saw this, I thought this total was too light. So I just look at Penn State team total and the full game over.
Yeah, and good weather expected at College Park Saturday. It's
good weather here.
Yep, no doubt. All right, Nebraska, Michigan State, as we stay in the Big Ten. Nebraska 3-point road favorites, 34.5 the total in this game. I know it's on the road and it's a flighty team in Nebraska, but I would take them. I definitely strong lean to the Cornhuskers here, -3 on the road. Michigan State's awful. Okay, absolutely brutal right now. I don't know how you make a case for Michigan State. They've had a trying season. Mel Tucker was given the boot for his nonsense. They got a makeshift coaching staff. They called D'Antonio out of the bullpen essentially to help out when he got, let go years ago. I mean, it's just a disaster right now. It's a mess with Michigan State football. The last 2 weeks against Michigan and Minnesota, they lose on the scoreboard 76-12 in those two games combined. You want to back them? Go for it. Knock yourself out. Not me. At least with Nebraska, I'm seeing improvement. I see a 3-game win streak. They went on the road and beat Illinois 20-7. They went on the road and beat Illinois 20-7. How can you not trust them to go on the road and beat Michigan State here? To me, they can. They showed me at Illinois they can go on the road and win a game. And Michigan State might just be worse now than Illinois, and they probably are. And after that, they beat Northwestern 17-9. Don't sleep on Northwestern. They're improving, by the way. Northwestern is definitely improving. They are a team to keep your eye on moving forward. And then Purdue, they trounced them 31-14, this Nebraska team. They're starting to play well, and that's what Matt Rule does. You get Matt Rule in there, he's eventually going to make this program better. I think it was a good hire. Now, I didn't expect great things in this first year, but they are getting better by the week. This is a really good defense. Their defense has really impressed me, Nebraska. They've got a good defense. Harburg is certainly a step up from Sims because at least with Harburg, he doesn't light up the scoreboard, but he doesn't turn the fucking ball over. He doesn't treat the football like a hand grenade like Jeff Sims did early in the season, which is all you need. Just don't make mistakes. I like Nebraska here. As long as it stays -3, they're the only side I can endorse in this game. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, this is an ugly one. I get it. And the wins have been good for Nebraska. This is another one this year that they could win. The tough thing is, where do you get to see? What do you get to back Michigan State? Like, even with 3 points, these teams over the last few years have played some close games, but Michigan State just isn't a world of hurt. And it's going to take a while for them to get better. Like, not this year, like a year or two away. Harburg, like you mentioned, that's what's been so great about him. But Bano is he's taking care of the ball. The defense has been pretty good. I thought they beat Purdue, but not like that. And 17-9, they took care of Northwestern. I'd lean that, but I don't love laying 3 points, even though I think they get the win. It's just a lean for me.
All right, we move along here on Hitting the Book. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Hit the like button. Back to the Big 12, BYU and West Virginia. West Virginia, 9.5-point home favorites, 10 now in some spots as well. 51 the total in this game. Money coming in on West Virginia. I'll tell you what, I like the offense. I don't know if I love the defense. They gave up a lot of yards to UCF. Houston went up and down the field, and they couldn't stop them from scoring a Hail Mary against them in that shocking loss. So I still have my worries about their defense, but I'll tell you what, this offense is getting better and better and better each week. They can run the ball. They've got some weapons at receiver. Garrett Green is continuing to improve at quarterback. His accuracy, throwing the ball, he's been really good. He can run. He's mobile as well. Definitely, I like what I see from West Virginia's offense. No question about that. And they're going up against a BYU team that is not their best defensively this year. So I would certainly lean to this move toward West Virginia here in this game. I don't trust BYU on the road. You look at some of these road performances, really the last 3. I mean, double-digit losses to Kansas, TCU, and Texas. They weren't even in those 3 games. This defense is way down from where it's been, and I'm not sure Keaton Slovis and the offense for BYU can trade points for 60 minutes here with West Virginia in this game. So favorite and over for me in this game if I'm betting it. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, I thought the offense has to be a little bit better because one thing is I don't want BYU here. It was like last week, like Texas, BYU's team total even under, but it seems they'll have a better performance than the 6 points. The problem is they can't run the football. And I think other teams are like, all right, you can't run it, you throw it. So they're just preparing for that. And yeah, what the West Virginia defense, who I thought just looked amazing the first 5 weeks, not so much. And the offense has been very, very good. I think you just take West Virginia's team total over. So you don't lay the points here. So wait a couple days, we'll have the team totals out there. I'd rather go with that, but I think they get the win here at home. BYU, not the same team on the road.
Yeah, you know what's shocking about BYU? You look at it, 129 in the country, rush yards per game and yards per carry. 2.9. They're averaging 2.9 yards per carry. That's unheard of. That's unthinkable for a team like BYU. They pride themselves on physicality on the offensive line, running the ball down your throat. They can't do shit running it this year. Nothing.
Crazy. It's just weird to say.
Not the same BYU. Yeah, West Virginia over. I think what Conor is saying about the over for the team total for West Virginia makes sense in this game. All three of those looks, I think, are pretty good. All right, Virginia Tech and Louisville. Next up here, we've got Louisville, 9.5-point home favorites, 48.5, 49 the total. I'm tempted to keep riding the express here with Virginia Tech, with Drones at quarterback, who has been such a breath of fresh air from that stiff Grant Wells. I can't resist knocking that guy every time we talk about Virginia.
Man.
I mean, I just can't just got to jab him every time. But he was just so inaccurate, erratic at quarterback, and Drones has just given them a lift. Let's be real. He has at the quarterback spot. It's been a really good Virginia Tech team since he's taken over at the quarterback spot. And look, they're starting to cover numbers. And like I said, I think I'm liking the direction of what we're seeing here from this Virginia Tech team. Brent Pry, of course, the head coach, done a nice job. They covered 4 in a row, including against Florida State, the best team they played. They lost by 22, but they covered 4-0 ATS their last 4 games. They've scored 30-plus in 3 of the 4 games, all the games not named Florida State as their opponent. I definitely like the upward trajectory we are seeing from Virginia Tech right now. Louisville's playing good. It's not easy to go against them either. I do get that. They beat Boston College, NC State, Notre Dame, a very impressive win. They shut out Duke with, albeit an ailing Riley Leonard at quarterback last week, 23-0. They're playing really good football. Plummer, and I like Jeff Brom and the offense they're running. They're putting up points as well. I think their defense has been better than I anticipated this year. We'll see if this game's competitive. Last year, I should mention, it was 42-30, or actually it was a few years ago when these teams played, so forget that. I haven't played in a few years, but I don't know. I like this momentum that Virginia Tech has had lately. Can they do it on the road's the question. They've been very good at home at Blacksburg against Pitt, Wake, and Syracuse. You're playing a pretty good team. Now you're doing so on the road, so that would be the one concern I have. But I've been riding Virginia Tech, and I'm certainly leaning Hokies once again here in this game. What do you think here, Conor? Virginia Tech, Louisville.
Yeah, can they take the success the last few games now on the road? Because early in the year, they just weren't good on the road. At Florida State, Marshall they lost, at Rutgers. I think they can. And Louisville, I think were pumped last week. They got the easy win. And one thing, though, I'm a little bit with Louisville is, and this team, I've talked about a ton, Bano, they drive me nuts when I bet them. They've been good this year. They were good against Duke last week. Is their defense that kind of early on the year gave up some points. Lately, they've been pretty good. I know last week with Riley Leonard, it was tough. They shut him out. But I think they've been better as the year has gone on. But I lean Virginia Tech a little bit too. I think it's just a little too many points here. So I like the 9.5 a little bit.
All right. Next up, I knew that 0-3 on the road, Nuke Worker definitely concerns me, but we're getting a lot of points. And look, some of those starts were Wells starts at quarterback, not all of them were Drones. So keep that in mind. And I like the way they definitely have so much more pop in this offense now with Kyron Drones at quarterback. It's not even a comparison, not even funny to see how different they are and better they are on offense now with Kyron Drones leading the way. All right, Georgia Tech, Virginia. We've got Virginia, 1.5, 2-point home favorites, 54.5 the total in this game. What a win for Georgia Tech. What a couple of wins Georgia Tech has had the last few weeks, in fact. The Miami game, which was absolutely insane. And then North Carolina last week, handing the Tar Heels a 46-42 loss. I've said it all year about Georgia Tech. I actually think they've got a pretty good offense. I actually like them offensively. Haynes King has played well. Gets away from Texas A&M, and now he's here. He's more relaxed. He's confident. He's getting his swagger back. And they can throw the ball. He can flat out throw it. And he sure did last week against North Carolina. 287 passing yards. They ran the football extremely well. There's that North Carolina defense rearing its ugly head again. Dante Smith ran it for 178. Haynes King even ran it for 90 yards against that North Carolina defense last week in the upset. So lots to like about Georgia Tech's offense right now. The defense is still a little leaky. I don't love the spot for them here, going on the road after a huge win like that. And let's give Virginia their credit. I mean, it's not easy all of a sudden to go against Virginia. Remember how awful they were? They were such an easy team to fade for me early in the season, but they've now covered 5 in a row. The losses have been close, 3-point losses to BC, NC State, and then last week against Miami. And they also have a win against North Carolina on their resume, 31-27 a couple weeks ago. The Musket Man, no, not that Kentucky Derby horse from 15 years ago. I'm talking about Tony Musket for Virginia quarterback's been pretty good for them. A lot better after he returned from his injury than before. They're even starting to run the ball at least a little bit better. Virginia here in recent weeks, it's improved, but definitely the passing game has been good. And I think you can expect them to do some damage here. Again, this Georgia Tech defense, especially against the run, has been brutal. Against the pass, it's been a little bit better, but still not great. Really tough game, but I lean Virginia here because I just think it's more of a detrimental spot for G Tech after the big win than it is for Virginia. So lean Virginia. Less than a field goal, I would lean to the Cavs here, but more than anything, I like the over here, 54.5. I think that's the bet I like even more in this game. Points from two surging offenses right now. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is just like you take the over, or it's just nothing. I don't find a ton that makes you want to go under in this, football game. And there's been a weird one. It's been a few times in the year, and they'll go back to the old defense, and they have. Like Georgia Tech, that Miami game, because I had a piece of that over. As much as I had Georgia Tech, it didn't go over. And last week, I love Georgia Tech, big dog. Now they're a little dog here. We talked about, because as soon as they lay points with that defense, there's no way you can take them. It's just like fade them. Fade them. What I've been impressed is Virginia's done this on the road, Savannah. The win versus North Carolina, and last week down to the wire versus Miami, they got some turnovers. That'll be big. And yeah, the offense has been great, running it, throwing it. It's been really, really good. I take Virginia here a little bit in the over. I think they can get it done at home.
All right, Virginia in the over.
As much as I've been at Georgia Tech, that's kind of just them as a dog 2 or 3 times. I think Virginia can get it done.
Yeah, it's two surging teams. I think it's pick your poison here. It's not easy to fade either of these teams right now.
Yeah, it's not. Georgia Tech, though, with Haynes King, they're in the game. And we saw that being down, and they scored they get hit quick. They had 3 or 4 touchdowns on one quarter last week.
Shout out to Come On Breeze. Oh, Dabby Cab. Welcome in, Dabby Cab, in the chat. I hope you tuned into the Medicate Monday show earlier. And Come On Breeze, we appreciate it. Glad you're enjoying the show. We love doing the show each and every Monday during the college football season. All right, Iowa Northwestern. Back to the Big Ten. Iowa 5.5 point road favorites, 31 the total here in this game. Look, this Northwestern team, this is amazing what they're doing. I think they've already done incredible things this year. They're 4-4 with the shitstorm before the season involving Fitzgerald, the hazing situation, brand new head coach thrust into the role because of all that going down. And they have somehow, pulled things together after a rough start. Everyone still remembers them getting absolutely embarrassed by Rutgers first game of the year. And here's David Braun, who's had to take over as the head coach in very difficult circumstances. And here's Northwestern that you look at their recent results now. Started with the win against UTEP. They had a tough game against a good Duke team, but they beat Minnesota outright as dogs, 37-34. Struggled with Penn State and really should have covered, though. That game was actually close for a while before Penn State finally pulled away from Northwestern. The loss at Nebraska, but they were competitive. They covered the number as 10.5 point dogs, and then an outright win last week at home against Maryland. as 14.5-point dogs, 33-27. They're now 4-4, and they can think bowl eligibility. Bowl eligibility for this team on a season like this would be absolutely unbelievable, for something like this to happen for this game, considering everything that's gone down involving Northwestern football this year. They're getting better by the week. Their defense is, still leaky, but they're not as bad as they were. And I never thought I'd say this with Ben Bryant injured and Brendan Sullivan's had to be the quarterback here for them the last few weeks. He's getting better. He had a really solid game against Maryland last week. Only 7 incomplete passes, almost 70% completions. He's been solid. And I don't trust Iowa laying points with this defense. And it is off a bye week for Kirk Ferentz and company, but I don't think a bye week's going to help this offense because they've had bye weeks for multiple years and multiple seasons and multiple quarterbacks, and it's the same old fucking horseshit Iowa offense every single game, every single week. I like the points here with Northwestern. Yeah, I cashed a ticket with Iowa against Iowa with Minnesota, and whenever they're laying points, I'm not interested. Michigan State, they failed as favorites. Minnesota, they lost outright as favorites the last time they were favored. They're just not good laying points. And Northwestern is definitely showing a pulse and just an incredible improvement from week 1 to now. So I like Northwestern here at Ryan Field in Evanston in this game. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I think if last week doesn't happen, even how they've played a little bit lately, Northwestern, this would be more. That's what I was like, man, we probably could have got over a touchdown.
Yeah.
Is where I'd really like
not
this.
The greatest value. I agree with Northwestern, but I still like
it is a little short, but it's tough to take Iowa. I think they could win, but I don't want to lay 5 points with them. Like, you're right. It's just an under. How low can this total get? So maybe you take an over. Maybe I sound crazy because I love taking an under no matter what. I've taken already a 30 with some of these games this year, and they've gone under. But I was reading an article, Sullivan, the game of his life. That's what they said in it, Babano. So that's how well he played against Maryland. And I think he could do all right here in a close game. So I'm with you, though. I'd only be on the points or nothing.
What's funny is Deacon Hill was touted as a quarterback with some athleticism and dual threat capabilities. We know he can't throw a lick. He was 10 for 28 with an interception and 116 passing yards against Minnesota before the bye week. But they said he could run a little bit. He was minus 22 in rushing yards against Minnesota. Minus 22 in rushing yards. Now, some of that was sack yardage. I get it. But still, no run game to speak of from the quarterback spot. So just looks like another bad offense with another mediocre, below average quarterback. That's what it looks like to me for Iowa right now. All right, next up, we've got Illinois, Minnesota staying in the Big Ten. Minnesota 2.5-point home favorites, 42.5 the total in this game. This is a tricky one for me. Minnesota, I'm not a fan of their offense and Kaliakmanis. They did win and cover against Michigan State, but it was really on the back of their defense. Once again, they're very banged up at running back. Darius Taylor, Zach Evans, questionable for this game. That's their top 2 running backs. I'm not sure I'm really rushing to lay points with this Minnesota team. I did have them against Iowa, but that was getting points. Laying points is a different story. We'll see how they fare here in this one. Illinois, on the flip side, they've lost 3 of 4, 3-5, disappointing season. If they want to qualify for a bowl game, they need to put some wins on the board, and it has to happen now for them. They are off a bye week, so there is a situational advantage in play here for Illinois. This number's come down. This opened Minnesota 3.5, and it's down all the way to 2.5 in this game. So a lot of love for Illinois. I think if you got 3.5, it's not a bad look off a bye week, and I don't trust Minnesota as a favorite, but you got to trust Luke Altmaier, at quarterback still for Illinois. And he's had some very, very erratic games this year, more bad than good. Under makes sense to me in this game. Lean Illinois, but I don't love it. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, if you have over the 3, maybe. Well, I don't want Illinois. And you're right, they do got to win. And maybe this is where they could go in and get one, but I don't want them here at all. And it's not that I love Minnesota. I just think they're at home here, short number, 2.5. They can get it done. And I still like the under. I was looking at this last night. Illinois' defense has been better. And when these teams the last couple of years has been an under, and the defense seems to be getting better, and we still know how horrible the offense is for Illinois. And Minnesota's not much better. So under for me here in Lee, Minnesota.
All right, Houston, Baylor. We've got Baylor 4-point home favorites, 56.5 the total in this game. These are two really, really erratic football teams. There's no question. Baylor 3-5 overall, 2-3 in conference play. Houston 3-5 overall, 1-4 in Big 12 play. Two teams that are just once in a while you'll see them rise up and have a great game like Houston did, obviously, against West Virginia. And then after that, they've done nothing. They've been up, actually Texas, they put up a good fight, but last week after that Texas effort, they fell completely flat against Kansas State, shut out 41-0. Baylor, that was a rough game for them against Iowa State, 30-18. Blake Shapen has a great game against UCF, struggles against Texas Tech, comes back, plays great against Cincinnati in a win, and then back to mediocre last week. So if you actually look at the pattern, it probably is a good spot to bet on Baylor, considering that they've gone win-loss, win-loss, win-loss the last 6 weeks. So they've alternated not only straight-up wins, they've alternated point spread wins and losses as well the last 6 weeks. So I lean Baylor here. I still think they're a little bit better than Houston. I don't trust Houston on the road, really. You look at them away from home, 41-0 loss to Kansas State, 48-28 loss to Texas Tech. They lose outright as favorites against Rice. I mean, they've been brutal on the road, 0-3 straight up, 0-3 against the spread in true road games for Houston this year. So lean is Baylor, lean is over too, because I don't trust either of these defenses. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, and one thing Baylor's, when I was going, is pass defense is a little bit better, and it was last week. It's like, as soon as you think Houston, can maybe cover, it's like, no way. Look, they just got ripped last week. Do you want them here? I don't. And I'm not rushing with Baylor, but I'd look Baylor. You talked about the full game over because Houston could score, but I just look Baylor team total because I do think they'll be able to score on this Houston defense. So Baylor team total for me in this game at home. They play their best football there. And, I don't mind the full game over as well.
Yeah, and look, and sometimes the trend is your friend. And right now the trend for Baylor is win-loss track record that they've had. It's been pretty solid for them. So we'll see if that ends up continuing here, this a little run that they have put together where they are, win-loss kind of a track record for them going into this game. All right, next up here as we continue along on the show, we've got Oregon State taking on Colorado in this next game.
Lost Bobano again, Conor. Go ahead and cook.
Yeah, let's get to it. Oregon State, Colorado in this one. Man, Colorado, one thing with one of my biggest wins that I really liked was that under with UCLA. They weren't able to score. Colorado's here at home. This isn't enough points for me here in this game. I just can't do it. Oregon State, on the flip side, the tough loss last week to Arizona. I don't know if I want to lay 2 touchdowns on the road. Oregon State back on the road after the tough loss. They went for that weird fake field goal, or they went for it there that was strange right before halftime. There was a few weird play calls for Oregon State last week, and they weren't able to get it done. And they're banged up a little bit with some of their defensive players, Oregon State. They were on the sidelines for that game at Arizona. I mean, is this enough? Are you interested in Colorado here as the dog, Anna?
Their offensive line's an embarrassment right now. Shedeur Sanders is getting, he's getting pulverized. He's like orange pulp right now. He's just getting absolutely just, crushed here right now by the opposing defenses. And yet he keeps on battling, and, they still have some opportunities to start. The defenses in the second half, it wore down last week against UCLA. And you can tell they're actually one of those teams now. It's starting to look like it, that they kind of play well in the first half and then they kind of fade in the second half. We're starting to see some signs of that from Colorado right now. This is a tricky game for me. I don't love the idea of laying 13.5 at Boulder with Oregon State coming off now their second loss in conference play. So all of a sudden this team's thinking Pac-12 championship. It's pretty much dashed now after that loss to Arizona last week. So I worry about the headspace a little bit for Oregon State. They can still have a very good season playing a really good bowl game still. But obviously Pac-12 title is out of the question now for them. I kind of lean to the Buffs here, but I just don't love what I'm seeing from their offensive line at all. And, that could be problems here again for them against Oregon State's defense. We'll see. But yeah, just a lukewarm lean right now for me as of right now with Colorado. Next up, we've got Arizona State and Utah in this Pac-12 matchup. Utah double-digit favorites, 41.5 the total. Boy, did Utah get humbled. Man alive, that was a dominant game by Oregon. Shout out to them. I'm not afraid to admit, total wrong side taking Utah at home. It was one of the rare games where we've seen Utah just totally outmanned. They
got dominated, Bavano, but and that's what you mean. Congrats to Oregon, because Utah had won 18 or 19 straight at home.
Yeah.
So that's what we were looking that way, and Oregon just stomped them early. That's how you shut the crowd up real quick.
Yeah.
It was 3 touchdowns. Yeah.
Yeah, they just said, you know what, not today for you guys here at this great Rice-Eccles Stadium, this tough environment. No, Bo Nix and Oregon went right down the field, opening drive, punched in a touchdown, and really that was the statement there that, hey, we're bringing it today, and we're sending you guys home with a home loss. And Oregon was just all over them, start to finish. Credit to Oregon for a great game, 35-6. Now, how does Utah bounce back? This is now their second loss in conference play. So their Pac-12 dreams are kind of dashed now for the most part, Utah. So can Kyle Whittingham rally the troops? Bryson Barnes and the offense struggled. The defense got lit up. That's not what you want to see. And it's not what you want to see considering, Arizona State's offense with Trenton Bourguet, at quarterback, they've definitely improved in recent weeks. This Scatabo kid, Cameron Scatabo, has been absolutely terrific running the ball for the Sun Devils. They're getting better under Kenny Dillingham every week. It feels like they gave Washington everything they could handle. What a great win that was over Washington State last week. This is a team that's getting better. And normally I always think, it's sacrilege to bet against Utah at home. And I'm not saying I'm going to, but my lean is ASU right now. They are getting better. I kind of worry about where Utah's mentality is now. Second loss, you're kind of outside the Pac-12 championship picture now. Can you rally the troops and be able to come back strong, play well, and not only win, but win by margin against what's an improved Arizona State team? That's the big question. I'm leaning to the Sun Devils a little bit. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, I think Utah comes back here at home and wins this game. I'm laying double digits here. I don't know. And Arizona State, I liked them last week. They finally get to win. They played so many close games. And that game, they were able to move the football better, like you mentioned, Pavano. But I still think their defense is pretty good. And that can keep them in this game. And we have a low total. I think if this is low scoring, I think the plus 10.5 is alive with Arizona State. Utah's offense just hasn't looked right. I know, hey, they played SC. We've seen any team and every team seem to get to 28 at least? Like, I guess maybe Nevada, you go back to the second game of the year. So yeah, I lean under here in the points with Arizona State.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning Arizona State. I hate the idea that I'm even thinking of going against Utah at home, and it wouldn't totally shock me if Whittingham's able to rally the troops and they come out with a strong, resilient effort and they bury this team. But I don't know. I don't know if Arizona State's buryable right now. Like, Bourguet's playing well at quarterback. Like I say, the defense is improving. What they did to Michael Penix Jr. was damn impressive a couple weeks ago. I know it was a big letdown spot after Oregon, that win for Washington, but their defense is getting better, Arizona State. So, and again, Utah's offense with Barnes winning by margin can still be a question mark. So we'll see how this one transpires. All right, UCLA and Arizona. Next up here, we stay in the Pac-12. UCLA 3-point road favorites, 52 the total in this game. Big win for Arizona, man. I don't want to go against Arizona. They're on a roll. They should have beat USC in overtime. Noah Fafita at quarterback plays well. There's no doubt about that. You look at this spot here, though, coming off that big game against Oregon State. They are back home, another big opponent coming in. UCLA does have a very good defense. It seems like Chip Kelly is starting to gravitate more toward Ethan Garbers at quarterback rather than Dante Moore. That's definitely been the, what we've seen here from them this week. So very interesting to see how this game plays out with UCLA and Arizona. But coming off the big win against Oregon State, I do worry about whether Arizona can rev it up again. But I'm not going against Jed Fish in Arizona right now. I like what I'm seeing. The quarterback play's been good. They found ways to win these games. UCLA is going to have to show me they can go on the road and take care of business. I lean Arizona. Don't know if I'll bet it, but it would be Wildcats for me or nothing. What do you think here, Connor?
Man, this is low here. You just talked about, but I've hit it since Fafita. The kid's really good. He's flat out. But the more impressed, that's kind of how Arizona State's been playing, is this Arizona defense, I think, has gotten better and better every week. But man, we know how good UCLA's defense is. Yep. When I see this total, I lean under, but we know there could be points, though, in this game. So it's just a lean for me. And man, UCLA, this would be big for them to go in there and win, but I'm not so sure. I'm going to look in this a little bit more, but I lean Arizona.
Yeah, I do too. I do too in this one. They're playing really well right now, the Wildcats. And, Jed Fish, an outstanding coaching, just 7-1 against the spread too. Meanwhile, UCLA just 4-4 against the spread. So you talk about a team that's been flat out undervalued from day one this year. It's been this Arizona team. Hard to go against that 7-8 they've covered this year for the Wildcats. All right, Cal and Oregon, another Big 12 matchup here that takes place. We've got Oregon, 24-point home favorites, 57 being the total in this game. I mean, my first thought is over in this game with Cal and Oregon. Oregon will score. Cal's defense is still not very good. Hell, we saw it last week against USC. We covered the number with Cal last week against USC, but not because of their defense. It's because of their offense. And look, there's another young quarterback that stepped in and played well. Talked about it with Noah Fafita for Arizona. How about the Mexican kid, Fernando Mendoza here for the Cal Golden Bears? He's been very solid at the quarterback spot for them. So in this spot, this is a spot now too where Oregon's off the Utah game. They've had some big games. Is this the game where they kind of let a team hang around? There's a lot of points to be laying with Oregon in this spot. And Cal has shown enough offensive fireworks and explosiveness that a backdoor score, could get you through the number late. So I lean Cal slightly, but I think the better look is the over here. I think Oregon's still going to get their points at home in Eugene. I think they're good for at least 35-42, at least, probably with Bo Nix, Bucky Irving, and that offense against Cal, who are still suspect on defense. And all you need then is like 17 out of Cal, and you've got a good chance to go over the total. So over for me is what I like the most here. What do you think, Cal, Oregon?
Yeah, and maybe they're a little bit, let's see, after a huge road win, but it just, for Oregon, for one thing, this offense is just rolling. Bo Nix, the guy from 3-4 years ago, he's 28 years old, that I ripped on so much at Auburn.
College, it feels like at this point. Yeah.
Hey, he's got college football down. He's playing great, Bo Nix. They're going to score a ton. Oregon's team total, I think, is easy in this one. And you know what? Oregon defense, can Cal do a little bit in this game? Because they've been able to shut out some teams here. But I think the offense has been all right for Cal. But, man, them on the road is not the same as home dog. But it is a ton of points. I'm probably not getting involved. I would just look at Oregon team total or full game over. Like you mentioned, Cal's defense has been that bad. Yeah. Like they gave up 50 last week. They were just getting gashed everywhere. So it should be easy for Oregon to put up points.
All things considered, this is a low total for a Cal game because that total with USC was in the mid-60s last week.
Yeah, there's some rain and wind.
57.
But I'm surprised it's a little low. I guess it could be maybe some nasty weather.
Yeah, I'm going to check on that as far as the weather goes. But if there's not any major weather, and I shouldn't call him Mexican kid. He's actually from Miami, Florida. I'm just saying Mexican descent, Mendoza. But yeah, no doubt he has definitely played well at the quarterback spot here. So let me just do my weather check here for Eugene on Saturday, and we'll see if we can find out what it's like. Light rain actually in the forecast and moderate wind. But how heavy is that rain going to be? So we do have to keep an eye. And it's early in the week. Just monitor it. I do have the over circled. We'll hold off for now. We'll see what the weather is closer to kickoff. But if it's light rain and moderate wind, that still wouldn't shine me. It would have to be heavy wind, and rain doesn't bother me when it comes to overs. It's especially light rain. It's wind. So as long as the wind isn't that bad, definitely look over the total, in my opinion, for that game. All right, next up, we've got Washington and USC staying in the Pac-12. We got Washington 3.5-point road favorites. The total currently 75.5. And you knew this total was going to be way up there with how explosive both of these teams are offensively. And with how leaky suddenly both of these teams have looked in recent games defensively. What's happened to Washington's defense? I mean, look, against Oregon, obviously it's, they're going to give up points, but how do you give up 33 points to Stanford? And I know Ashton Daniels can play. He's a solid quarterback, and Troy Taylor's, got doing some nice things here with Stanford, but you really should not be giving up 33 points. That was a real shoddy performance from Washington on defense. 27.5-point favorites. They never sniffed a point spread cover. Obviously the offense, Michael Penix Jr., the great receiver, Odunze, who's just had a terrific year for them. They did enough on offense to survive with the win. But no, I think in this situation here, we've got two defenses that really, that's why the total is where it is. It's just, I don't know if I could bet it over this number. I mean, that's just so high, 75, 76, the way it is right now. But you understand why it is. Washington has scored 42, 36, 31, 59 in 4 of their last 5 games. USC, I mean, look at this defense. It's just so bad. They're so lucky that they beat Cal last week because the defense was atrocious. Jaden Ott made them look stupid running the ball against them, especially early in that game. But they've given up 41, 41, 38, 34, and 49 points in the last 5 games. I mean, it's just no defense to be seen. When's Alex Grinch going to, basically bite the bullet for this hideous defense? I mean, he's just a terrible job. And it's getting worse, not better, as the season goes on. Look, I think Washington, I could only play Washington here. They've got everything to play for. But this is USC as a dog, where if you're ever going to take USC, you take them catching points, not laying points. But they're 0-6 ATS their last 6 games, USC. And the last time they were an underdog, you think, oh, USC is an underdog. This is when you want to bet them. Well, the last time they were the underdog, they got blown out at Notre Dame, 48-20, and it was one of Caleb Williams' worst games you'll ever see him play. So I wouldn't be on this dog. It would be Washington for me. I'd certainly see a lot of points. I lean over. I just don't know if I could pull the trigger at a number this high. What do you think here, C-Mac?
They would have to get some turnovers, a couple stops, because I think that could this be they're up for this at home. Can they play spoiler here? USC, Caleb Williams. I don't know. How can there not be points? This is the number 1 passing offense, and in the league. USC can't stop anything. So just this total's crazy, but man, it seems like it's going to get there. No, it just seems like it's going to get there. Over, even at 75.
Stanford and Washington State next up. We've got Washington State about 13.5-point home favorite, 60 the total. I like the Stanford. I like the trees a little bit here. Stanford plus the point. Stanford's showing me a lot right now. That battle they put up against Washington was impressive. I like the offense and the direction it's headed. It's getting better by the week with Ashton Daniels at quarterback, and he can run with the ball a little bit too. And this Washington State team, they're kind of going sideways right now. 4 straight losses to UCLA, Arizona, Oregon, and Arizona State. It's been a tough schedule too, but I mean, I see one team kind of running out of gas, Washington State, and I see another team that's really playing tough, covering numbers. And look, Stanford, if you've been covering numbers with them, if you've been betting them this year, you've done all right, especially of late. 3-2 ATS their last 5 games. I know Washington State just absolutely destroyed this team last year, 52-14. And they've actually covered 7 in a row, Washington State against Stanford. But a lot of those were competitively lined games. And now you got Washington State laying 2 touchdowns here. For me, this would be Stanford, or you leave the game alone. And as far as the total goes, look, Washington State defense has crumbled. They're just not stopping anybody lately. Stanford is still a little sketchy on defense. They've given up 40s in 4 straight games. Over for me in this game. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, I think you look at the over, or even Washington State team total over, because you're right, those were smaller. And this Washington State team, just, since the win, they beat Northern Colorado. I think after that, they just haven't looked good and lost. It looked a little bit better against Oregon and last week on the road. I mean, this is a spot here at home But Stanford can hang around and be feisty like you talked about. The defense isn't very good, but Daniels is all right. They got a couple receivers. They got I saw this on there, Pabana. Our guy Hank Bachmeier's brother. He's a wideout for Stanford. I forget his name. I think it's Tigger or something like that. But he's all right. Stanford might be able to get in this number. I think you just look at Washington State. Cam Ward back at home, take their team total.
Yeah, Cam Ward has played well, and for the most part, he had a couple of bad, but it's really the defense that's really fallen apart here for Washington State. It's why I think Stanford can probably stay inside this number. They do have some weapons. E.J. Smith can run with the football pretty well for this team, which is good to see. Like I said, the one thing is, too, I was concerned, the moment that they lost a couple of weeks ago, Ben Urasek, the great tight end, because this guy is probably going to be an NFL tight end. But they've actually been able to bounce back, and their offense is still moving the football without him. So that's good to see. Good coaching, that is, by Troy Taylor. Because I thought the Urasek injury was huge for Stanford, but the offense has rebounded from it, and they're still being able to move the ball with some success. All right, let's go to the Big 12 now. Kansas and Iowa State. Iowa State 2.5-point home favorites, 53.5 the total. Look, everyone's going to say it, right? This obvious Iowa State spot, right? They actually played better lately. Of course, they beat Baylor in their last game on the weekend. And now you got Kansas off the monster upset win against Oklahoma. Fox Television, big noon kickoff last Saturday in Lawrence. And you've got the goalposts came down after they beat the Sooners in that game. And now you got to go on the road. So it's definitely a dubious spot for Kansas. And we know they haven't been as good on the road either. On the road this year at Nevada, they didn't cover, but they won by 7. Texas, they get destroyed. Oklahoma State, they lose as road favorites. So they're 0-3 against the spread on the road this year, Kansas. So I'm not on Kansas in this game. I don't know, though, if I'll just bet Iowa State simply because of the spot. I still think Kansas is the better of these two teams, but I know I'm going to stay off Kansas based on the spot. Coming off a win like that, they haven't been as good on the road. And look, Iowa State is getting better. Becht is still inconsistent at quarterback, but he's gotten better. The offense has gotten a little bit better, and the defense has picked it up, too, for Iowa State. So I get it. Iowa State spot. I just don't know if I'm joining the party. What do you think here, C-Mac?
I am. I think this is a shitty spot for Kansas. I loved them last week, and now they head out on the road. And I think they lose this game. And I think Rocco can throw on this Kansas defense. And they made some plays, which they do at home. And enough to win the game. And it just seems that defense doesn't come to play on the road at all. And we know Bean, he can throw a few picks, and it always seems like he does that on the road.
Yeah, if this is Bean again, that would really worry me.
I think it's Bean.
Daniels gives them a chance in this game. I think with Bean plus the spot coming off the Oklahoma win, that would be pretty tough for Kansas.
Yeah, so I like Iowa State in this game.
All right, C-Mac like an Iowa State. All right, LSU, Alabama. Next up here, we've got Alabama. There's some luster taken off. Not quite the same as LSU, Alabama in recent years, but we still get excited for it, I guess. We've got Alabama, 3-point home favorites, 59.5 the total here in this game, 60.5 in some spots. You look at LSU, both of these teams actually are off a bye week for this matchup, so there's no advantage there. LSU has kind of gotten things back on track. I know the losses to Ole Miss and Florida State were bad, but they win 3 in a row, Missouri, Auburn, and Army coming into this game. Alabama as well has played well the last several weeks. They beat Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Arkansas, and then Tennessee. Really bad start against Tennessee, but they roared back, and they ended up with a nice victory against Tennessee in the second half of that game. So we'll see how it goes in this one. Jaden Daniels is playing absolutely outstanding for the LSU Tigers, no question about that. The offense is fine. Logan Diggs at running back. They've got Neighbors and Thomas and Lacey at receiver. The O-line's good. I mean, I'm not at all worried about LSU's offense, but I am very worried about their defense still. And look, when you look at Alabama, I think Jalen Milroe's getting better if you look at it. And I see two offenses that Jalen Milroe's getting better. There's no question. Jace McClellan's been good running the ball. Isaiah Bond and Jermaine Burton have stepped up at receiver for Alabama in recent games. I see this maybe as a little bit of a shootout here. I see an LSU team that improving offense, or not improving. They've been great offensively all year. It's been their defense that's been bad. But I see Alabama's offense like really improving, really getting better. They're starting to get that explosiveness back again in their offense. They put a 40 spot against Mississippi State. They scored 26 against a pretty good A&M defense, 34 against Tennessee the week before. They're getting that explosiveness in their offense back, and Milroe's getting his confidence back. So I don't love either side. I think at 3, I would lean LSU in a close game, but I like the over more than anything here in this SEC showdown. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, the guy just put in there. I don't think Daniels comes back this year, but who knows with his injury.
Oh, Jalen Daniels for Kansas. Yeah, I don't
think he does, but that guy for the last 2 or 3 years, it's like, I don't know. It's just like he's in, he's out, but I don't think
Daniels is healthy though for LSU, and he's playing.
This Daniels is, and he's alive in this game. Gabano, it's just cash all year long. LSU over. Take it. This game's going over.
In this game, exactly.
Take the over.
That's another thing about LSU too. While it feels like this, they're really rolling. It's Brian Kelly versus Nick Saban at the end of the day, and Brian Kelly doesn't win these games, and Brian Kelly doesn't win many big games. You can have all the Missouri wins and the Auburn wins and the Army wins you want, but those 2 step-up games this year, I can't get it out of my head. Ole Miss and Florida State, he shit the bed. LSU did in both of those games. So, yeah, I can't take LSU because of that bad big game track record from not so big game Brian Kelly.
True. But I really don't want to run to this Bama team, even at home. Of course, they could win this game. But, I think LSU's got the offense to hang around, not only get over, but be in this game tight.
Yeah, and like I say, these 2 offenses, LSU's been amazing.
Yeah, my guy, we're talking Daniels, the Kansas game. Yeah. We're talking that Daniels.
Yeah, keep your Daniels straight.
Exactly.
Exactly. All right, Oklahoma State. We got the Battle of Bedlam here once again with these 2 teams. It's funny with Oklahoma going to the SEC. There's doubt about whether this rivalry will continue, and that's a shame. There should be Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State every year, but we do have it this Saturday. We've got Oklahoma 5.5-point road favorites in Stillwater. 62.5 being the total here in this game. There's no way I'm fading Oklahoma State right now. In fact, I'll be on them. I know I will be on them. I know it's a bounce back spot for Oklahoma, their first loss of the year against Kansas last week. But Oklahoma State is one of these teams. You talk about coming from that concerning start. Gundy didn't even know who his quarterback he could count on would be. He was going back and forth with Garrett Rangel, Gunnar Gundy, his son, and then Alan Bowman. Finally settled on Alan Bowman. And since he settled on him at quarterback, the offense can't be stopped. It's unbelievable. It's every week this team is putting up big points. They're running the ball. They're going fast again because they've got the confidence back on offense. Yeah, absolutely. I love what I'm seeing from Oklahoma State on the offensive side of the football. The defense is still a little bit leaky. They did shut down Cincinnati last week in that game. No question about that. But they're still not great on that side of the ball, the Oklahoma State Cowboys, especially when they play a pretty good offense, and they will see one here with Dylan Gabriel and Oklahoma. Let's not forget they gave up 32 to Kansas, 34 to West Virginia, 34 to Iowa State. So I like the over here too. This feels like an old-fashioned battle of Bedlam shootout, and we know we've seen some high-scoring affairs with these 2 teams in the past. Last year, not so much, but a couple of years ago, we saw 37-33 for Oklahoma State here in Stillwater. I could see it. I see something like 34-31 in this game, and that gets you over this total. Doesn't look like weather's going to be that bad. Sunny and no heavy wind in Oklahoma State for this game. So I like the home dog, Oklahoma State, and I like the over here. What do you think here, C-Mac?
I think Oklahoma bounces back and wins this game, but I don't know if you want to lay that touchdown. What we've seen the last 3 games from them is that defense that was good against some of these shittier teams. It's still the Oklahoma defense. Like they gave up, 30 to Texas, 29 to UCF, and then 38 last week, and it could have been more against Kansas. Being at a couple picks there. They were having a tough time all day long. Yeah, I think we get a back and forth game here. I think Oklahoma might win this, but yeah, I kind of lean the dog here. Oklahoma State riding high. Just when you think Gundy is just down and out, maybe this guy's on the end from the depths of death. Bring it back. Bring it back,
Tell him,
Jose.
Connor.
Bring
Tell
it
him,
back.
Connor. I fired him 4 weeks ago. I fired him 2 years ago.
I know
you
you
never
did.
give up on a coach that's done as many great coaching jobs in a season as Mike Gundy's done. I know it started.
Jose does.
Bail on
Jose does.
I gave up on him because he can't decide between a quarterback, and then it took him 4 weeks, and here we go. We get embarrassed by South Alabama. It's fine, but guess what? This is going to be the final bedlam. Those cowards won't schedule us in the SEC. They're cowards. The final bedlam, Oklahoma State wins it. It's annoying that's a 2:30 or 3:30 kickoff, but that's fine. Oklahoma State wins this game. I hate Oklahoma. They're a bunch of losers. They're fraudulent. And Alan Bowman, who I learned who he was about 3 weeks ago, is my guy now. Because Spencer Sanders transferred to Ole Miss just to sit on the bench and suck. So let's go, Pokes. Oklahoma State wins this game outright, damn it.
Well, there he goes. He's got to be the guy. He's their fan, and he's now your quarterback.
Yeah.
So a lot of rah-rah from our guy, Jose. Reverse
a
sweep.
lot of rah-rah from Jose. And, this is, like I say, it's sad that this rivalry is coming to an end. But, Oklahoma State, man, I mean, they've just become just unbelievable. Like 4-0 straight up, 4-0 against the spread. And it's not been a cupcake schedule either. Kansas State, West Virginia's pretty solid. Cincinnati was a weaker opponent, but they destroyed them. You play it's on your schedule. And Cincinnati's a rough team right now, but they beat the piss out of them on Saturday night, 45-13. So that's what you want to see, that Oklahoma State's not just beating the weaker teams, but beating them up. So I think they're ready to give Oklahoma a game here on Saturday night, what should be a high-scoring affair, as we both alluded to. All right, Kentucky and Mississippi State in the SEC next up. We've got Kentucky, 3.5-point road favorites, 46 being the total here in this game. This one is interesting. Mississippi State's not a team I'm all that excited about. And, of course, we saw them lose to Auburn for 27-13 over the weekend. Auburn with the wire-to-wire point spread cover. Mississippi State's been a fade for me all year. If you've been betting against Mississippi State, you're doing well. They're 1-6 against the spread their last 7 games, 2-6 against the spread overall. Kentucky on the flip side, coming off a 33-27 loss to Tennessee, a back-and-forth game. Their defense all of a sudden needs to be talked about. It's really fallen off. 51 to Georgia, 38 to Missouri, 33 allowed to Joe Milton and the Vols last week. Not what you want to see. And another thing, too, about Kentucky's defense is they've really been had trouble against the pass. And it's a Mississippi State team that, this moron coach here, Arnett, took them out of the air raid, so they're not throwing it as much as they used to under the dearly departed Mike Leach. But I don't know, 46 feels like I can only look over right now with the way Kentucky's defense has just fallen off right now. And I know Mississippi State's had some issues on the offensive side of the football. Last 2 weeks, they've struggled against Auburn and Arkansas. But against this team, they might be able to do a little bit more damage. Mike Wright, though, at quarterback's been sketchy. I will say that. Yeah. And that's the problem right now with it. So I would lean Kentucky if I had to, but, they're not in great. I know I don't want Mississippi State. Let's put it that way. So either bet Kentucky or you pass the game, in my opinion, and I lean over. We'll have to see if Will Rogers can come back from that arm injury. Obviously, he helps the Mississippi State offense quite a bit if he's able to play, but that he's questionable as of right now. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, the Mississippi State defense kind of came back. I was just shocked. Arkansas the week before, that was just like, hey now, that was just like the worst game I'd seen in a long time out of a team like Arkansas, especially with Mississippi State, who I just saw like a week before that, like Western Michigan, it was right, or I don't know who it was, give up 35 points, 300 yards. And last week, Peyton Thorne, my guy who can't really throw it, he throws for 230 and 3 TDs. If I would have known that, I would have laid it with Auburn. We were talking about shit, because I haven't seen Peyton Thorne do that in a while. You're right, though. With Wright, I don't know. The offense is tough. He can run it a little bit. He doesn't have a great arm. He's inaccurate. Kentucky needs to win this game. because they play Alabama. I think it's South Carolina. They have another tough one to end the year. Like they might not. They better win one of these down the stretch. Oh, it's Louisville to end the year. Kentucky, Louisville. There you go. Yeah, I just don't want it though. Right now I'm off, and I don't want this total either. This one was next.
All right, Arkansas, Florida, staying in the SEC. We've got Florida 6-point home favorites, 49 being the total here in this game. Not ready for prime time, the Florida Gators. I know there were some people that thinking, Georgia without Brock Bowers, not the same offense. Georgia's been, not covering point spreads as much lately. Florida, they did have a good win against Tennessee, although they got killed by Kentucky as well. Florida would be capable of hanging with Georgia. Not the case. Just a brutal game. Mistakes. You can't turn the ball over like Florida did. Graham Mertz was in over his head. The defense got shredded. No Brock Bowers, no problem. Carson Beck was fine. They ran the ball. They threw it all over Florida, 43-20, a beatdown suffered by Florida at the hands of Georgia last week. If you think I'm going to trust them now coming back after a loss like that, laying 6, no way. Not for me with Florida here in this game. Even though it's a quote-unquote bounce-back spot, they did beat Tennessee. But other than the Tennessee game, their covers have been against Vanderbilt, barely, at home, and they barely covered that game. And South Carolina, and they were fortunate as shit to win that game. In fact, I think South Carolina blew it more than Florida won it. So I ain't laying 6. And Arkansas is off a bye week. I'm not saying Arkansas has been as good this year, 2-6. They've struggled. It's been a tough year for the Arkansas Razorbacks. And that's unfortunate to see them struggling the way they are. KJ Jefferson hasn't been the same. I mean, it's Sam Pittman's team has definitely had a tough time this year. 7-3 loss to Mississippi State. Brutal showing from the offense. That being said, they're back in the dog role. They've covered 3 of the last 4 as an underdog. 34-31 loss at LSU. 27-20 loss at Ole Miss. 24-21 against Bama. They were right in that game. Give me Arkansas here. Chance to hit the reset button, pull your shit together off a bye week. I know it's been a disappointing season for Arkansas, but it's such a good spot for them. And I like these bye weeks, late October, November bye weeks, Conor. They're worth their weight in gold because these teams have been playing 8-9 games in a row without a bye week. Then they finally get one. It's huge for teams to get a bye week at this stage of the season, second half of the year. So yeah. I like Arkansas a little bit, plus the number off the bye, and they've been good in the dog roll. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, this one was tough for me going through it because, they're in the dog roll because it's not going to be easy. Go to the Swamp and win, and I don't think they do. They have the bad loss to BYU, but then they cover versus LSU, 3-point game. And it was all right. 8-point loss to A&M, 7 to Ole Miss, 3 to Bama, and then that game we just mentioned the game before because it was Mississippi State. How horrible it was, but they're off the bye. You got to think, but these numbers for this team. Sam Pittman, he just makes bad calls. They go real slow, the offense. Like, that spurt of the second half against Bama was like the best I'd seen them play all year. Both sides of the ball, offense and on defense. Someone just put in the chat, I kind of lean to the under in this game too. I just wish this was a 52.5. I'd really like the under, but I lean that way. And I think Florida wins at home. I just don't want to lay this number.
All right, we stay in the SEC, Missouri and Georgia. Next up, the aforementioned, of course, Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia, 15.5-point home favorites, 56 the total in this one. It's almost like it's become an exercise in, well, is Georgia fired up and through the roof, sky high for the game and for this particular opponent, or are they not? That's really what it's boiled down to because you look at their results. South Carolina, they weren't feeling it. They didn't cover. UAB, obviously, they weren't feeling it. They didn't cover. Auburn, they weren't really feeling it because Auburn's not a great team this year. They didn't cover. But then they played Kentucky, and Kentucky was undefeated going into that game, and that game got Georgia's attention, and Georgia whipped Kentucky in that game, 51-13. Then they play Vanderbilt. That Vanderbilt doesn't get their attention. They don't cover. And then last week against Florida, it's a rivalry game. Florida's playing all right. That did get Georgia's attention, and they won and covered. Is Missouri going to get Georgia's attention? That's what it's boiled down to. If you feel Georgia's going to play up, you bet on Georgia. If you feel they're going to play down a little bit, then you bet against them. And I'll say this, Georgia last year got everything they could handle from Missouri.
Yeah, I remember that game.
22. Yeah, it was right down to the wire. In fact, they were fortunate to get out of there with the win. Missouri's playing some good football. They're off a bye week, so Eli Drinkwitz has time to prepare. Brady Cook's played well. The offense has been electric lately. They've scored 34, 38, 39, 38, 34 in the last 5 games. So this Missouri offense is in good form. This might be the game. This might be the spot. This might be the week to maybe take a shot against Georgia, quite honestly, coming off that big win against Florida. So I lean to the Tigers here. Missouri on the road, kind of lean over as well, because I think their offense can move a little bit. And we see Georgia's offense is starting to get better. Like, let's be real, 51, 37, 43. Like, Carson Beck and the offense are starting to groove. So we might see over this total as well in this game. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, I still don't think Missouri has a great defense. So as long as Georgia comes to play, if you don't love laying this, I look at their team total. Is this finally, though, Missouri can play well on the road? Like, they went to Vandy and won, and they went to Kentucky as their other road game, and kind of just second half rolled there. This won't be easy. Yeah, I remember that game at Missouri was tight. I think Georgia kind of remembers that. I just Georgia for me.
Georgia for you. All right. I like it. We disagree. I think Missouri, I just don't know if I can bank on this being a spot where Georgia's sky high for the game like they were against Florida, like they were against Kentucky, where they rolled those two teams. We'll see. And Missouri,
they should be able to score, though, on this team, though. If you don't love laying it, take the team total, I think.
Yeah, 2-0 straight up, 2-0 against the spread, too, for Missouri on the road. So they definitely have cleaned up their act away from Columbia this year. We'll see if that continues on Saturday. All right, Texas A&M and Ole Miss. Again, in this SEC, we've got Ole Miss 3-point home favorites, 53.5 the total in this game. Money coming in on A&M, I agree. I certainly think at 3.5, 4, where this line opened, I was definitely a buyer on A&M. I like their defense. I like the way even with the unfortunate injury, of course, suffered by Wegman, who I really liked at quarterback. He's good enough to get the job done. Max Johnson. Max Johnson comes from LSU. He was there before at that program. He's a veteran quarterback. He's experienced. They can still rely on their run game, the defense as well. I agree with this number coming down where it opened Ole Miss -4. It's down to 3. There's still some 3.5s. DraftKings has 3.5 still with Texas A&M. I kind of like that side a little bit here in this game. I know Ole Miss, we like their offense a little bit. I still have some questions about their defense. Jackson Dart probably had a better season so far this year. They are 5-0 at home, so they played good football here in their home venue. But, you look at the LSU game, survived it barely in a shootout. Arkansas, 27-20 at home as well. Those were their two best probably opponents at home. We'll see how they fare here in this one. I'm leaning a little bit here to the A&M side in this one as far as the size. The total I'm neutral on. I think it could go either way. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, they give up some, but I think Ole Miss's defense has been pretty good for most of the year. I know they got the shootout with LSU, and A&M I think still has the better defense. But let's see it on the road here with Johnson. I get why you liked it, just 4.5, 4, 3.5. But if this goes down a little bit, I lean Ole Miss. I want them at home. I think they can get the job done. I just don't trust this A&M team away from the house.
All right, next up here, we've got Kansas State and Texas back down to the Big 12 for this matchup here. We've got Texas 4.5-point home favorites, 51.5 the total in this game. Dangerous spot here, really, for Texas in this game because Kansas State, is a very capable group, 6-2 on the year. And we've seen some blemishes from Texas. The Houston game was not pretty after they lost to Oklahoma, and then BYU was a bounce back, 35-6. But like I say, BYU not that same team. Kansas State's been really impressive the last 3 weeks, 3-0 straight up in ATS. Texas Tech 17-point win, and how about 82-3? They beat TCU and Houston combined. So this is a Kansas State team that's really, really playing good. And you look at the last 2 meetings, Kansas State, Texas, both games decided by 7 points or less. Now, Texas did cover, but they were 3-point favorites. in both games, 22-17. They won by 5. They won by 7. I don't know. This just feels like the numbers in a perfect spot where, Texas is still probably the better team. And like I say, I don't worry about Texas at quarterback either with the injury to Quinn Ewers because there's loaded at the quarterback spot. They got Malik Murphy and Manning, Arch Manning waiting in the wings, and they are 5-star recruit quarterbacks. So you don't worry about Quinn Ewers being out for this Texas team. They're fine at quarterback. The next man up can play. And we've seen that out of Malik Murphy here since he's been the QB for Texas. So it's a really good game. It's a really tough game because I think the number's in a really good spot. I'd probably still have to lean to Texas just a little bit. They did win by 5 and by 7 the last 2 years, and they're every bit as good this year, if not better. So slight lean to Texas. I don't think I'll be getting involved too much, though. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, I don't know if I bet. I'm going to think about this one through the week, but I'm waiting for Will Howard's been pretty good. And I just think now he's had a couple shitty games on the road. And I know they've rotated a little bit with quarterbacks, but like last week, he got most of the snaps. He can have a bad game. And away from Manhattan, he's played his worst football. I think it's kind of cheap. So I like Texas here.
I will say this, now that I look at it, Kansas State on the road, they lost at Missouri, they lost at Oklahoma State, and the Texas Tech win is the game that Baron Morton got injured. And that's the game where Strong took
and they
over.
Owned him.
Yeah.
Remember we talked about that, like 9 in a row, some weird shit like that?
Yeah, exactly. And then Morton got injured, and the Texas Tech offense just did nothing after that against Kansas State. So that's not a really great track record. You lost 2 against Missouri and Oklahoma State, and then you beat up Texas Tech, who were down to their third-string quarterback on the road. So that's enough concern about their road efforts, Kansas State, where it probably would have me not interested in the underdog here in this game. And Texas, like you said, only laying 4 now in this one. Feels maybe a little bit cheap. All right, Auburn Vanderbilt. We've got Auburn 12.5-point road favorites, 49 being the total here in this game. Vanderbilt, they had that 1-point spread cover against Georgia. And I thought maybe now they're going to start being undervalued. And I took a small shot with them against Ole Miss last week, but offense with Seals couldn't get it going. And the defense, as usual, struggled against Ole Miss. We'll see how they fare here against Auburn. Auburn is improving, but am I ready to lay 12 with them on the road? I'm not so sure about that. This is a team that on the road, they haven't covered a point spread this year. Think about that. They haven't covered a point spread this year on the road. Their only win was at Cal by 4. Now you're asking them to lay 12 on the road. No, thanks. It's probably a pass for me. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, this is shit. As good as Auburn was last week, I don't want them on the road. And Vandy's that bad. Like, I'm waiting for Vandy. Like, they got to have one of these games. Down the stretch last year, they had a couple. Could this be it? Especially if Thorne isn't, throwing it around. But the Vandy defense has just been that bad all year long, and the offense is so inconsistent. Man, if Auburn scores, I think Vandy could get a little bit. The total was a little bit high. If it was a little lower, I'd like the over.
Yeah, maybe Auburn team total over because everyone scores on Vandy, and the Auburn offense is improving. So maybe you look in that direction, but otherwise not a whole lot for me that I like in that game. All right, we're down to our last 3 games here, Purdue and Michigan. We got Michigan 32.5-point home favorites, and the total here right around 48.5, 49 in this game. It's just with Michigan, it's a question of, are they completely, falling asleep, sleepwalking through the game? I mean, that's really the only way you can try going against them right now because they haven't looked it to me. They have just been dominant on defense, suffocating on defense, getting turnovers, not letting teams find the end zone, shutting out Michigan State, and giving up a grand total of think about that. They have given up 10 points is the most points they've given up in a game this year, this Michigan Wolverines defense. I mean, it's just been that good on that side of the ball. Purdue's got some capability on offense, but not as much as they had early in the season because, Hudson Card has been regressing big time. They've only scored a grand total of 35 points in their last 3 games against Nebraska, Ohio State, and Iowa. That's not what you want to see. Not to mention, too, Purdue, they got blown out by Nebraska last week, 31-14, couldn't move the ball. Now you got to play this Michigan defense on the road. And Michigan off a bye week too, as if it's not going to get more difficult enough for us here in this game. We got to face this Michigan team with extra time to prepare. So that's definitely what I would be concerned about. Now, they do have Penn State next up, which I don't buy into the look ahead because, to me, Michigan hasn't shown any signs of looking ahead or being flat whatsoever. So, yeah, this is not one underdog that I will be betting. That's for sure. But maybe you look Michigan. Maybe you can still lay 32 with them. Hell, their last few wins, 38-point win, 42-point win, 45-point win, and a 49-point win. So maybe you do lay it with Michigan. Maybe they still can win this by 35 plus. I certainly would only look Michigan here. What do you think?
Since Harbaugh was back, he's been covering it. Remember early on in the year, they didn't. They kind of let off the gas. Some of those teams hung around. I remember a couple weeks ago, Purdue. Oh, this is a spot for them at home. Ohio State. Blown out. It was 41-7. And then at Nebraska, it's kind of just falling apart. Where this Purdue team is played better on the road the last few years. I think it's just Michigan. Team total, you could lay it. Even the Purdue team total under, because that's worked. Whoever Michigan's played. It's like you mentioned, 10 points has been the max for these teams against Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just difficult, impossible, in fact, to trust Purdue here in this game. They can, we'll see. And like I say, they've been very impressive. And you could probably still lay it with them, honestly, because like I say, their margin of victory, Rutgers was the last time they won a game by fewer than this point spread. The last 4 weeks, Nebraska, they won by 38, Minnesota by 42, Indiana by 45, and Michigan State by 49. So when you actually look at it like that, maybe 33 is still cheap here on the Michigan side in this game. All right, next game, Notre Dame and Clemson, which, look, coming into the season, we thought this was a big-time matchup. With Clemson's mediocrity this year, it's kind of taken some luster off it. Notre Dame, 2.5-point road favorites, 45 being the total here in this game. If I knew how Clemson's mindset was going into this game, I'd be more interested in betting this game, but I don't.
Do they have a mindset at this point?
To me, the reason I liked NC State last week after the Miami loss, which was their second loss, it was a devastating loss. It took them out of the ACC championship picture. No playoff hopes anymore either. And I said, Clemson's used to playing for big things, big conference championships, playoffs, national championship. Now that's all out the window. And I said, I don't trust them against NC State to show up. And sure enough, they were terrible. At least on offense, they were. They look like they're crestfallen. They're disheartened. This is not what they signed up for when they were recruited by Clemson. 4-4, fucking mediocre football team. That's not what they signed up for, these kids. And I think it's getting in their heads that, hey, our season's like, what are we playing for now? Just to get to a bowl game? Just to play in the fucking Mayo Bowl? I mean, that's like, that's really
Duke Mayo
Duke Mayo Bowl. I mean, that's really that's the expectation now. That's what the goal has to be, because it ain't the playoffs anymore, the championship, or it's not even the ACC championship. You can't win that anymore. I mean, to me, it's hard to trust these kids to be motivated. I think if there's one spot and one game that down the stretch they might be up for, it could be this. It's Notre Dame coming in home to Death Valley, or coming into Death Valley here. But I can't bet Clemson based on what if. What if they're showing up for this game? What if they're into it? But what if they're not into it? What if I get the Clemson that looked hungover from, a season of expectations that's going to fall way short, and they played like it last week against NC State in that loss as 10-point road favorites? So I probably have to, by default, lean to Notre Dame. They are the better team. Do I have questions about them going on the road, winning a big-time football game? Yes, because they did lose to Louisville. Now, they did beat Duke, but again, they might have lost that game too if Riley Leonard doesn't get injured. So Notre Dame on the road is still a little flighty for me, but I don't know if I could put my money on Clemson right now. I worry about the psyche. I worry about the mentality. Dabo's had a chance to show me if he could rally the troops last week prior to the NC State game, and he couldn't. They were terrible. They were awful in that game, and I'm not backing them here. I worry about where their mindset is, where their heads are at. Kids that think they're coming here to play for championships, and the best they can do now is the Mayo Bowl or the AutoZone Liberty Bowl or some crap ass mediocre fucking bowl game is the best thing Clemson can achieve now this year. Not what I want to see. What do you think here, Conor? Notre Dame Clemson.
Yeah, I it just seemed you go to Death Valley. This is not a spot, and this is right though. Notre Dame should be favored. They're 7-2, 7-2 ATS. Clemson's 4-4 and 2-6 against the number. And Notre Dame, one thing I love is their defense. Clemson's defense is all right. For what they've been, but not very good. Notre Dame's defense is for real. And the last year they beat up on them. That was at home. But I think the more and more they play Clemson too, the last couple of years, like tight losses, and then finally beating them, it won't be easy there in Death Valley. But I think it's just Notre Dame or nothing here.
Yeah, good point, Bar. Hey, good to see you, Jacksonville Zoe in our chat. That's a good point about the NC State offense. That's not a great offense, and they were a lot more successful here last week against Clemson's defense than I thought they would. I kind of figured the offense wouldn't do a ton. Cade Klubnik really struggled against NC State last week.
Awful. Yeah. How about the week before in the Miami where he pulls the ball and Dad was like, I didn't call that. He just there's problems there.
There's problems. Dabo even looks beaten down. He really does in this press conference. He looks beaten down. This is new territory. This is foreign territory for him. A team that's 4-4 after their first 8 games. When's the last time that's happened to him? When's the last time that's happened to Clemson?
Yeah. Bankroll, he said, motivation, of course. I don't know. Shit. I don't know if you want your money on that.
You're betting based on assumptions and guesswork right now that maybe they pump themselves back up because it's Notre Dame coming here for as their opponent that they play spoiler, but I don't know. I didn't like what I saw last week at all from their offense.
And they still have injuries.
Yeah.
Shit, it's rough.
They do. I'm not saying for sure that I'm going to be on Notre Dame. It's the only side I would bet in this game if I'm getting involved in it. All right, next up, we've got our final game of this Hitting the Book show, and it's a pretty good one in the Mountain West. Boise State and Fresno State. Fresno State 3-point home favorites, 55 being the total in this game. Was that a buy sign on Boise last week against Wyoming? They got Holani back, and he is a good running back. I will say that. They finally had a healthy George Holani for Boise State, and it made a world of difference for their offense last week against Wyoming. And I'll say this too, they've got a nice thing going with the quarterback situation where now Talon Green is more the Wildcat running quarterback, and they've found a better passing quarterback in Maddox Madsen here for Boise State. And he actually played pretty well throwing the football last week in the win against Wyoming. So, maybe some buy signs here for Boise State. And keep in mind too, with Boise, they had the bye week before that Wyoming game as well. So a little bit of a chance to hit the reset button. Actually, when I look at it, Fresno also had a bye week prior to the UNLV game. But Fresno has suddenly looked a little bit overvalued. They're 0-4 ATS in their last 4 games. They lost at Wyoming. Utah State, they were 5.5-point road favorites. They won by 5. Defense looked a little leaky. Defense looked leaky last week, too. If UNLV hangs on to the football, they probably beat Fresno last week. Instead, turnovers, just an stopped on 4th down happened multiple times. Such a winnable game for Maava and that UNLV team last week, but they fall short 31-24. And man, it was all those turnovers in the third quarter where UNLV was up comfortably and they just opened the door and said, here you go, Fresno, just walk on through that door and get yourself back into the football game with all those turnovers and mistakes. And it came back to haunt them. But Fresno needed a lot of screw-ups from UNLV just to survive and win that game straight up, let alone cover the number. You could tell Mikey Keene, who came back at quarterback from injury, was a little rusty in that game. He struggled in the first half, got it going a little bit in the second half. I think he'll be better here in this game against Boise State. If the weather's fine, I might look at an over here because I like the little dynamic they've got going, Boise, with Madsen and Green using both quarterbacks. They've got the running back that is so good, but he's always been hurt, and he's finally healthy. George Holani makes a big difference for Boise, having him back. I could see them moving the football here. Their defense was good last week, but it's a limited, plodding Wyoming offense. We also can't forget that on the road this year, this is a defense that's given up 56 to Washington, 31 to San Diego State, 35 to Memphis, and 31 to Colorado State. So they have given up 30 points, Boise's defense, in every road game this year. And I think Mikey Keene now got a game under his belt coming back from injury, shake the rust off. He'll be more efficient, more productive, more accurate in this game. So I think I'll get there with the over, actually, here with Boise and Fresno State over 55. As far as the side goes, it's tricky. Fresno hasn't covered in 4 straight, and Boise looked pretty damn good off their bye week against Wyoming, not just beating Wyoming, dominating. So, and plus the history recently with these two teams. Fresno beat them in the Mountain West Championship game last year, 28-16. I'm not saying revenge spot, but this first game between these rivals, and they've always been two of the better teams in the conference the last few years. So Boise probably wants this one. I lean Boise slightly, getting 3 or better, but I like the over more in this game. What do you think here, Connor? Good matchup in the Mountain West.
Yeah, when I looked at this, it's 60. There's some decent wind here. But last week I had that under, and that was only because Wyoming did nothing. Yeah. I cashed that. But other than that, Boise's been an over team, just flat out all year long. And same with Fresno for the most part. I think you do lean over here. I think there's points both ways. It just has to be. I think Fresno wins this game at home. It's just do you want to lay the 3? Because I think they do beat Boise here, and I'm not so sure I want to do that. But I'm with you a little bit on the over here.
All right, that's a good matchup there in the Mountain West on Saturday night.
Oh, yeah.
One of the later games as well, so looking forward to that one. All right, there you go. Another edition of Hitting the Books for this college football season on a Monday. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Hit the like button if you haven't done so already. We appreciate it very much. Looking forward to doing this show for the month of November as well. It's hard to believe, but we've really only got, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, like 4 regular season Mondays left in college football. So after this, so it's unbelievable how quickly the season goes along. And before you know it, we'll be talking bowl games and doing all our bowl preview shows in the month of December. So that's right around the corner as well. But looking forward to it. We both had a really strong college football week last week. Hopefully we can duplicate it this week. Conor, final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Yeah, shout out to the chat. Thanks for joining us. Ian Rance, the guy, good to see you, Jacksonville Zoe. Robert Franklin, as always, real deal prime, the grinder, nuke worker. Man, hopefully I'll see you soon when you come to Vegas, my dude. But Steve G, Nunya, especially all our guys in the green. Shout out to you guys. That's it. Hit the like button. Another week down. Let's win, baby.
Absolutely. And you will find me, and I believe you'll find C-Mac as well later tonight on the Monday Night Football live stream right here on Pub Sports Radio. Of course, not the best matchup. Detroit's obviously a really good team. Vegas, not so much, but we got Raiders and Lions tonight. Monday Night Football. I'll be on for the first half like I normally am on Monday nights. So join us for that. And, of course, join us every Monday throughout the season right here on the Hitting the Books show. Of course, Tuesday night, it's the NFL version. Pretty much the NFL version of what we do here on Mondays with college football with Jimmy the Bag and Troy Torrance, the Bankroll Blitz. So make sure you tune in for that Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time on Pub Sports Radio. Thanks to everyone for joining us. For Conor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great week. Enjoy all the college football action, and we will see you again next Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific for another edition of Pub Sports Radio's Hitting the Books. Until then, class dismissed.